is the September meeting of the Human Relations Commission in Palo Alto. I think we'll begin with roll call.
Commissioner Bichetti?
Here.
Commissioner Chen? Here. Commissioner Ezrin?
Here.
Commissioner Moran?
Present.
Commissioner Onan? Here. Commissioner Stone?
Here.
Commissioner Savage is excused.
Yes, and it looks like our staff liaison, I mean not staff liaison, our council member liaison is not here either, at least not yet. Okay, so do we have any agenda changes, requests, or deletions? Quite a few items. Anything that needs to get moved around or changed? No? All right. Then do we have oral communications? Looks like we do. Great. All right, so call your name, please. Should they come up to the microphone?
There is no
There's-
microphone.
Oh, okay.
They just have to speak loudly, so,
Oddly, so we can try to get you on tape.
yes.
Okay, so the first person is Carrie Andrew Crittenden.
Hi there, my name is Kerry Andrew Crittenden. I originally came here about 22 years ago. I've been here in Palo Alto for the greater part of about 9 years. And I've done a lot of work with different communities in the Bay Area, mostly San Jose, pertaining to police misconduct issues, police oversight, civil rights related issues. And for the most part, my experiences with the Palo Alto Police Department have been very good compared to the other police departments, and I've actually been surprised at the courtesy, professionalism that I've had with most of the officers that I've met. I think it was Chris Durkin was the chief when I originally came, and I knew Lynn Johnson, and I think everyone except for Kevin Kyle I knew pretty well. But anyway, I met with a gentleman this morning who told me a story about something that his friends had experienced, or had allegedly experienced. I want to be flat out, I don't know if it's true or not. It could be completely false, could be, maybe there's a degree of truth to it. But I'm concerned, that just of the possibility that this happened concerns me, and without stating it as fact, I'd like to bring it to your attention, hoping that maybe the HRC could implement something, or work with the police department to look into some internal controls, and to see if they're working correctly. What I heard was that within the last month or so, and I did send an email earlier today, I didn't bring a hard copy. Within the last month or so, there was a group of young men who were walking on foot from East Palo Alto to Palo Alto. And they were stopped by an officer, allegedly, and I'm not sure if it was an actual detention or a consensual stop, but the officer had allegedly asked them, why are you coming to Palo Alto? What are you doing here? Where are you going? And they said, oh, we just wanted to visit Palo Alto. No specific reason, and the officer had told them, and again, I answered allegedly, that unless they could give a reason of what specific business that they were conducting, who they were visiting, why they were in Palo Alto, which they couldn't do, that they'd have to turn around and leave Palo Alto, go back to East Palo Alto, which sounds to me like a major civil rights violation, if you ask me. That's certainly not any law that anybody can enforce. It certainly sounds to me, it resembles a lot like the practice of redlining with businesses, and I don't know the ethnic makeup of the gentlemen that were supposedly coming to town, and I know approximately when it happened, and it was in the vicinity within a couple of blocks of University Avenue and the East Palo Alto line by the freeway. And I've done a Public Records Act request, and I suspect it's probably possible I could find out who the officer is and go from there. But in the meantime, without knowing if it's true or not, I think that it might be a good thing for at least the city to be aware of the possibility that it happened, and make sure that it doesn't happen, and that there's adequate frontline supervision with the patrol sergeants and et cetera. Thank you very much.
Right. Our next speaker is Aaron James.
I was going to actually start with
some issues regarding the vehicle habitation ordinance, but Kerry did call me earlier today, and it strikes me that there's some similarity. In 1966, when I was a junior at Gunn High School on the football team, the Palo Alto Police Department actually asked football players to wear their letter sweater on Halloween night and be a liaison in the back of the patrol car between youth that were trick-or-treating and the police. And sure enough, I volunteered to do that. And at one point in the evening, my parents were in the NAACP, so I had a fair amount of exposure to civil rights at that point in my life. We reached the Newell Street Bridge, and there were two young African Americans, probably 5 or 6 years old, in their costumes. The police got out of the patrol car. I was stunned. I didn't believe that these kinds of things happen. I was a rather naive junior in high school, but they actually got out of the car and said, "You little N's," and I'm not going to say the complete word, "you need to go back to your side of town." And for many, many years after that, I reported it to my parents. There wasn't a police officer that I could look at without being angry about that incident. I like to think, because I'm friends with Dennis Burns, and we talk about a lot of issues, including the recently passed vehicle habitation ordinance and the companion ordinance that outlaws people from being in public facilities or on or about the premises of public facilities between 10:30 and sunrise, that what Kerry's reporting, and he doesn't say that he observed it himself, that he heard it, isn't still happening some more than 40 years later from the incident that I described. I gave you a copy of a piece called the Pepper Spray Times. A friend of mine, Carol Denny, it's an iconic publication out of Berkeley, and it's the September edition. And there's an article, I'm going to read it out loud. It's called "Palo Alto Council Takes Firm Stand Against Sleeping." And below the picture says, "The scourge of sleeping is sweeping the nation and we have to put a stop to it." On August 5th, 2013, the Palo Alto City Council took a firm stand against the scourge of sleeping sweeping the city. Quote, "What we're doing tonight is the hardest of balancing acts," said Councilmember Liz Niss, chairwoman of the City Council's Policies and Services Committee, which recommended a 6-month jail sentence and a $1,000 fine for criminal car sleeping. Quote, "We're attempting to care for car sleepers by making certain they have more upscale sleeping quarters in our local jails," unquote. Quote, "Our wealthy community members are uncomfortable with car sleepers," explained Councilmember Gail Price. Quote, "Most of them have trouble sleeping and it just upsets them so much to have people sleeping peacefully in their cars right nearby," unquote. Quote, "We're one of the few local communities without an anti-sleeping ordinance," agreed Councilmember Larry Klein. Quote, "We feel really left out," unquote. Councilmember Mark Berman and Councilmember Karen Holman voted against the ordinance, proving that some people just don't get how dangerous car sleeping can affect the entire community. Quote, "People look peaceful when they're sleeping, but imagine what they're dreaming about," stated Niss. Quote, "I've personally vowed to never sleep again." Now, clearly, I was disappointed that the Human Relations Commission was not, from the beginning, when we first started this discussion about a vehicle habitation ordinance back in July of 2011, wasn't at the forefront of trying to take this vehicle habitation ordinance on, talk about the impact of criminalizing the homeless. But you have another chance. You all have the power to, at least from an advisory position, ask the council to quick, fast, in a hurry, reverse this vehicle habitation ordinance before it starts to go into effect. This is not, as you all know, just a local problem. It's a county problem, it's a state problem, and it's a nationwide problem. I've been doing my best to try to make certain that all the vehicle habitation dwellers in Palo Alto and the unhoused generally are fully advised regarding their legal defenses. Defense of necessity, the application jury nullification, discriminatory enforcement, and I'm hearing a buzz, so I'll talk more later. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. James. And I think that one more card came in while we were listening to him, too.
This is for item 6.
Oh, okay. All right, so is that it then for board business? Okay, great. All right, so let's move on to approval of minutes. I think we had several sets of minutes. Does anyone have changes, corrections?
Sure, it's just the August.
The August ones? Did anyone have changes or corrections to the August ones? I have several in my packet though, is there?
In the corner, they say.
Approved, okay.
Yeah. I did receive some from Commissioner Kelly.
Okay, anyone else have any changes? So have the changes that from Commissioner Buchetti been implemented?
Not yet.
Okay, so do we need to wait or can we approve them provisionally, the changes?
If Commissioner Buchetti wants to explain what he's changing and everyone's okay with it, you can agree on tonight. Otherwise, I can make the changes and bring them back next month.
Okay, so Commissioner Buchetti, do you feel comfortable talking us through your changes? Or would you prefer to wait
Why
till
don't you
the?
revise the minutes and bring them back next time so we can
We'll see then.
section.
Okay, great. Oh, thank you. All right, moving on. Our first order of business is a presentation from Elliot Margolis on Made into America, a program that's being co-sponsored by HRC. Is that you?
Yeah,
So could
thank
please
you.
come forward?
Is it possible this is internet connected and I could go to the site to show you on the
RCB
screen?
is
That's not,
Not?
no, I don't think it's not.
Okay.
Um,
What I can do, I mean, I have my computer, but it seems like it would take a fair amount of time and energy to pass it around to show everyone. So I could just tell you about the site, but encourage you to make a visit to it. It's, the site is at madeintoamerica.org.
Okay.
And if you remember, it's to become an archive of stories of people coming to the United States, leaving everything behind in the country and starting a whole new life here. And the idea of creating this archive is, it's really a celebration of immigration, and it comes not in, it comes purposely at a time when comprehensive reform is being discussed. The voices and stories of immigrants is something we want to put in the forefront, even though we're not advancing any specific policy or numbers and all of that. But the appreciation and the stories go a long way toward building that community sense of what it means for our community to have immigrants. But the website asks people to share a story of someone in their family, no matter what era of U.S. history they came, no matter what country they came from, because a lot of times, recent immigrants, we've created documentaries and slideshows and dialogues, and it's hard to get folks to come and pay any attention if they feel like, well, I'm not an immigrant, I have no real connection to that, and I have too much to do. So this was a way to bring a lot more people under the umbrella of their own connection to immigration in the United States. So far, maybe some of you saw, we had a very nice article written in the Mercury News that started on the front page last week, and I'll send a link to whomever sends it out. And we've had one in the Alto Weekly. So far on the site, there's 60 stories. And just reading through these stories, you get this connection to everything from the Irish potato famine to pogroms, civil war in Colombia and El Salvador. And you have, so much of world history ends up in our own community. We're threaded. And you also get these incredible stories of what people did to get a new life started in the United States. What we did find out was that as much as we thought if we build it, they will come, and on the website you'll see it says submit your story, and it's a real easy process. And we actually say, if you don't know what to write, here's 7 questions, just answer these, or some of them. And we find that as much as, you know, I can be at the YMCA in the locker room and I mention that I'm working on this and 3 people give me a story from their family. But if I say go home and write it on our site, it doesn't happen. So we've been lucky enough to get 2 more rounds of funding, and we're creating a lot of group experiences now because we think if we can get people together, and then the stories will happen before we open the doors and let them out. So we're now working with a lot of different organizations to set up group writing workshops and video of stories, including Ray has gotten us into Channing House. We're going to be at a church in Redwood City. We're going to be with Stevenson House, Palo Alto Historical Association, the Italian American Heritage Foundation, Los Altos History Museum, and Castellea school kids are going to become scribes for seniors that don't want to write it themselves. So it's starting to come together, but I expect that by the end of the year, there'll be many, many more stories because of these experiences. One of the other things we're doing is reaching out to some of the local celebrities to do some postings. We'll try to get sports and artists and writers to put something up, but we would really love to get human relations commissioners to put their story up. And then what we want to do, because you're our first and to this point only co-sponsors, we want to get an entire bank of stories from the HRC in Palo Alto, and we want to schedule a meeting with your counterparts in other parts of the county and say, look what our HRC in Palo Alto did. Can we get you to match them? And that's part of, you know, it might be a little devious, but I think if human relations commissioners can lead the way in a way to open the doors for other like-minded community people to participate. This thing will become a real great tool for community leaders, for teachers in classrooms, and even in the 60 stories, you're totally bowled over and inspired. So it's only going to grow. I would love to either schedule a time where I can sit and do a couple of exercises with you to loosen up the writing material, or I can scan a photo if you have some photos that aren't digitized and put it up with your thing. I'll leave it for tonight that I'm going to send you each the website and just hope for the best. And if you're interested in me coming before or after a meeting to help any of you, or if you want to just email me and say, come meet me for coffee and help me, I'm stuck, I am glad to do that.
So let me just make
Yes.
sure I understand that you want to meet with each of us, or all of us, to get all of our stories and then use that as some momentum for getting other HRCs to
Yes.
participate. Now, logistically, is it easier for you if we all assemble at one time, or do you prefer doing it one-on-one with each person?
The easiest thing for me is if you go home and you just do it yourself
So fun.
on the website. Second easiest is if you do it as a group. But like I said, I feel that if I can get you all on,
Okay,
it's gonna be that much easier to get other
okay,
bodies, and I'll do it any way that works for you.
okay.
So,
Can I ask
and
Sorry.
that's kind of it. I'll end there.
Oh, really? Because I'd rather not interrupt you.
That's okay.
All right. What's the funding, you probably have told us this before, but if you get more people, is there a cost to this? And the only reason I'm asking you is if you have any anxiety about having only a limited number of people, or is it the idea that the more you get, the more you might get funding for doing something like this, which would be good?
Definitely
Yeah.
the latter. Of course, there's a cost in my time, and I have a part-time assistant who's helping me with outreach. And that money will all get spent, and I do accounting for the whole budget that I keep track of with our media center. This is through the Mid-Peninsula Community Media Center.
saw
I
that,
should have
yeah.
mentioned that. And of course, we have a finance director who charts the whole thing. expense-wise.
So what are your objectives overall, maybe in terms of number of stories or impact, are you trying to become like a website that goes nationwide with stories like that?
I feel like eventually we will switch to a more national approach. I have to get permission from the funders to do that, but I feel like opening it up and maybe doing an alliance with some other organizations, national organizations, including storytelling organizations, that would help cross-promote and draw more people to it who have an interest either in their country, their of origin, or story writing itself. That it'll grow to well over 1,000 stories, I believe, in the next year or two.
It could be like a Facebook of.
I don't know,
immigration.
but like I participate on something called cowbird.com, and it grows its storytellers. Yes.
One last question I had, can you tell us more about the recent founders?
Well, it's all been from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation,
Okay.
and the second round was when I said, we really need to work in groups, and here's our new approach, and will you see it, because the first year, a lot of it was spent on just building of the website. Recently, we got funded to do two things. One is a storytelling salon night. Joe Smidian's going to be one of our storytellers, and we'll have 8 storytellers. It's open to the public, and if you feel like coming, you can write to me via the media center, and it'll be taped and the stories will be put onto the website. Another event that the new funding enabled me to do is work with our libraries, and I have a meeting next week with the Palo libraries to choose a community book read and maybe get on an immigration theme and maybe get an author like Dave Eggers or a local author who's written about immigrants, to come and lead a discussion. And we'll do it at Kepler. So we're trying to take it out of the web as well and bring people together in a room together, but celebrating immigrant themes.
Yeah, I have a question about, I
Yes.
just wondered, to get people to write, it would be much easier if you
Yes.
had some simple guidelines.
We
One
do, yeah.
specifically, aiming for, so
Yeah.
they can answer questions. In that way, people will be more
I
interested.
totally agree, because it's very intimidating to just say,
Exactly.
right.
That's right.
And so if you go to the website, right under submit a story, it
Right.
says tips for writing.
Okay,
And it gives you 7 questions
Oh,
that you
good.
can answer. And if
Exactly.
you can answer 4 of them, that's still great.
yeah,
Nobody will read those or do it, except for me, I am a writer, so I'll do it, I promise.
well, I'll do it.
Yeah, and if you're really enthusiastic when you get there, leave a comment or 2 on somebody else's story. It makes them feel great.
Now, it's a, at least you understand,
Well,
right?
it
least you know where you stand,
coincidentally, it coincidentally, I went to that website last week.
Oh,
And that's because we held a big single-payer health forum in San Jose, and one of the panelists was Lucila Ortiz.
yes.
So when I was,
Yes,
we
yes,
was
she's all right.
Siren, the Services, Immigrants' Rights and Education
Yeah,
Network.
yeah.
And I was Googling to find her email address, and Google that had
It came
made her
up?
into America about the 4th thing down.
Yeah, she
And
did a
this-
video.
It was
Yeah.
so cool, because I got to learn about, her immigrant.
Oh, I
life.
love
So
hearing that story.
It's
Yeah.
a great,
I'm glad to hear that individual stories show up on Google.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, I could probably help you with search engine ranking if you want it. One of my-
I know a
Okay,
little bit.
Okay, guys,
so I've been-
yeah, we really appreciate your input, but we've got to kind of stay focused here on the agenda. Elliot, I did have another question for you. I was very lucky to observe short films made by students in the Palo Alto Housing Corporation this summer
Yes.
about their, were you able to use any of those in this project, or are you interested in using them?
I haven't yet. I was one of their guest speakers and met them. They were fabulous
They were,
kids.
yeah, the films were
And,
wonderful.
I was supposed to, in fact, Anna Paula, who's their teacher, is going to be my assistant if we get funded from the Council of Humanities. And we're going to do these digital story workshops on immigration. But for some reason, I was supposed to cross-promote some of their videos, and it slipped through the cracks, so thank you for reminding me.
Yeah,
I'll
please follow up,
get
because
in
I was
touch with
so
her tomorrow.
impressed. These were very young kids, 15, 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
They filmed their abuela, their dad, their mom, talking about all kinds of different immigration stories. It was fascinating. They did an incredible job, especially being so young, so I really hate for
Yeah,
them
I
to
don't know how
lose
that slipped. I'm glad you
Yeah.
reminded me. They had their graduation ceremony
Yeah, I
at
was
our,
there, and
at
they
the
screened
media
all the
center.
films.
Yeah,
And I was just very, very blown away by what they did. And I think it would dovetail perfectly with what
perfectly,
you're doing. So.
yeah. And we have cross-promoted stories written on 2 other websites, so it's not unprecedented for us to take what they've put on their website and
Great.
put it on ours too.
Well, if you've had any trouble connecting with Anna, definitely connect with
No,
me.
no, I have her
Okay,
her
great.
number and email.
All right, great. So are there any other questions or comments?
Elliot, there's another benefit that you haven't mentioned yet, and that's the intergenerational one.
Absolutely,
That
yeah.
once these are done, people can email them to their grandchildren or friends or whatever, so that there's a way of even an individual spreading this story to others that he or she knows.
We have the Castellea students, and there's the JCC teens are going to become interviewers of older people, and they're mostly their relatives, and actually the Castellea kids are coming to Stevenson House. So there's going to be a lot of intergenerational activity. We've had a harder time getting into the like Gunn and Pally, and but Camille Townsend is helping us, and we're trying to get into some of their curriculum.
I got one last question. So it's an immigration project, but for those of us who, I was born in Redwood City, grew up in Palo Alto,
Yeah.
and haven't had an immigrant in the family for a very long time.
Very long. Yeah.
Where do I come into this? Well, what can I write
Well,
about?
you're more challenged.
Yes.
But
I've been told that a lot.
we have one of the oldest story was an immigrant that came in 1635, and so it wasn't even his great-great-grandfather. It was way before that. But usually it requires some genealogy buff in your family that you have to contact and get some information from. So you get the prize out of all the HRC commissioners probably for doing the most homework to get a story out there, but it's possible.
Great.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
My stepson, basically, is following through right now because he can't figure out why he has been anxious about the fact that his parents gave him a different name from the one they have. And the reason he got that name, is because his great-grandfather went underground during the Union of the 1930s. And he was Irish, so they took on another name, a dead person's name, to be exact. And so that's extraordinary for identity. I mean, when you hear these stories, it just enriches. It's incredibly enriching.
And there's also kind of people bump up against the fact that they're sometimes depending on family lore, and they have no idea how true or false it is. But that's how we have history. It comes to us, and we do our best to write it down and say it may or may not be all true.
Okay, great. All right. Is there any other questions or comments for Elliot? Thank you
Thank you so much for your time. Yes.
Really enjoyed it.
And I'll be sending Minka.
Sure. Please do.
Okay.
All right, so let's move on to item 2, and we have a speaker. Item 2 is our house and
Presentation
presentations.
first and then.
Oh, then we do the speaker?
Yeah.
Okay. So Minka, can you introduce our speaker?
Bob and Sue.
So let me just say, as most of the commissioners know, we've had an ongoing learning series on affordable housing. We've had a number of speakers. This is our latest installment.
And I've been privileged to work with Bob for the last 2 or 3 years. As some of you know, I'm on Santa Clara County Collaborative on Homelessness, and Bob has served as the co-chair of that for many years. Now I believe he's the secretary. Treasurer. I was going to go one or the other. And Sue, we've just met, works with Bob, and is going to be speaking to us about county programs on homelessness. And Bob is also extremely knowledgeable about county funding that has gone into housing programs. So, and he's, I think, handing out something I've referred to many times with you is the homeless point-in-time count. So, Bob, and Sue.
Thank you very much, Minka. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I have 6 handouts here. I'm going to not go through all of them in detail, but highlight several things in each one, and one I'll take them one by one. But just to give an overview, and I'm very aware of the fact that the city of Palo Alto is beginning to tackle this issue in a constructive way, dealing with outreach, case management, housing, et cetera. And my intent this evening is to share with you the big picture in all of this as it relates to county's efforts and different communities connecting with the county's efforts to deal with homelessness in a productive way. And I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and I can easily say that now is the time when we're the most productive in being able to tackle this effectively than in all of those 20 years. And I can, as I go through, I think you'll be able to see that. First of all, I want to talk about the overarching strategy. It's about permanent housing, permanent supportive housing, not sheltering people in terms of the effective approach of ending homelessness in our county and in our communities. Part of that as well is responding effectively to people who are in encampments on the streets or in different places. I'm very familiar with the Kublai Center issue as well. As well as the other part of what I want to take a look at with you is the fact that there are different housing programs that are funded by different sources. I'm going to explain several of those for you as well, in case you are not familiar with them. First of all, this handout, in case you have not seen this before, and I think Minka said that I'm wrong, that she has distributed this. Just a couple of things, as you can see in the city of Palo Alto, just being very specific. We do this count every 2 years, and the count increased by 6, from 151 to 157, from 2011 to 2013. Those are people counted in who say that Palo Alto is their area. They're either counted on the streets of Palo Alto or in the area, or they identify themselves as Palo Altans in a shelter, a transitional housing program, or housing like that. On that second page, you see the occurrence, 41% of the people are first-timers, length, 57% 1 year or more. Primary cause of homelessness, job loss, predominantly. And 95% are very interested in permanent supportive housing as a way out of their homelessness. The full report from this is available on the county website. I imagine you might have put it on the city's website, I'm not sure.
Not yet, but maybe Consuelo or I will.
Yeah. It covers the entire gamut of the entire county. This is just North County doing this for your benefit, to underscore the rest of what I'm going to say. And so the big approach county-wide involves what's called the Care Coordination Project. We're aiming toward a centralized system so that we can most effectively house people where they want and in permanent housing that's available. This Care Coordination Project has its people on a registry that's done by a survey, the Health Vulnerability Index Survey. And we have individuals, volunteers, case managers, et cetera, doing this survey all the time. And so that registry changes weekly because people are being added to it. And the Care Coordination Project has a cadre of case managers, intensive case managers, who have a service level of 1 to 20 people or so. And so every week, the coordinator of that registry looks at the list, gets a new set, and if there's a case manager open, gives the person on the top, that case manager, several people from the top of the list. And how people rise to the top is their length of time homelessness, as well as their serious health conditions. And so the more serious and the length of the time that's longest, that rises to the top. That's why it can change as people are added. And so the case manager receives some referrals. They then have at their disposal a lot of housing resources. Those resources, has been money set aside from the county for rental assistance anywhere in the county. HUD has specified 100 Section 8 vouchers, again, anywhere in the county. We have several HUD programs, 2 new ones that will house 60 people, or 63 people or so, with rental subsidies anywhere in the county who are high users of county services. And VASH vouchers, the Section 8 vouchers for homeless veterans are available. And so those case managers have those resources and others at their disposal to be able to house people appropriately. So that's the care coordination project approach of centralizing, responding to the homeless in this registry all over the county. Another part that's a part of that is the outreach. In San Jose, for example, and I know Palo Alto is taking a page out of the book that San Jose has started, and other jurisdictions are doing the same, Gilroy most notably. Specifically, that in San Jose, they have a homeless help outreach line, and people call that, ordinary citizens, anybody can call that line, and there is a dispatcher then, when she retrieves the messages, gives them to an outreach team, depending upon where they're organized in the city of San Jose, because there are several outreach teams who have the different encampments and areas of the city, organized. The dispatcher gives the name or names to the individual outreach team, and they go out. And they reach out, try to connect them to services, including housing, et cetera. And that's a plan that has proven to be effective. And the obvious need is more and more affordable housing. That's the biggest rate determining step in ending this. But it's a good model.
I don't interrupt your flow, but just a point of clarification.
Sure.
On this outreach, who calls in? Is
Anybody.
A homeless person, him or herself?
Or somebody who's concerned about the issue, a business owner. I have a lot of calls that I get every day from either homeless individuals or people concerned, and I refer them to the person who does the hotline. This is specifically in San Jose. So it's a way, concretely, especially for the city of Gilroy, and I know Palo Alto, it's the scene as well, it helps reduce the calls for service to the police department. Because without this, the police are the main front line of receiving the calls, and they got to go out to them, et cetera. Whereas they could be spending their time more effectively with doing their other jobs.
The outreach teams actually go out and look for homeless?
Oh, yes.
Not wait for the...
Yeah, and they engage them. They establish relationships with them. They don't just go once. They go over and over to visit the folks, try to connect them to services.
Do we have that number, that phone number?
I do.
Thank you.
And again, that's just for the city of San Jose. 408. I think it's 510. 510-7600.
And there is no countywide number yet?
Nope, not yet. We're trying to get different jurisdictions to replicate this good, effective model, and Palo Alto is already open to that. Through the community working group and Envision and NCAS, the North County Alternative Center.
Is this known as the hot team approach?
Excuse me, Mr. James?
Yes, sir.
Please,
Yes.
it's not appropriate to keep interrupting our speaker.
I wasn't interrupting, I was actually asking relevant questions.
No, you were, but you were interrupting with your relevant
No,
questions.
they were relevant questions, but anyway, let's go on, not
Yes.
interrupt each other.
Oh.
Connected with this outreach, and I want to back up in terms of the permanent supportive housing. Look at the handout that's the Permanent Supportive Housing Fund. This is critical, again, countywide, to be able to do two things: set aside money for permanent supportive housing for this population and other low-income populations, and for the development of affordable housing. And it's critical so that the jurisdictions all throughout the county see, especially when it comes times to revising their housing elements, their con plans, hey, there's a larger strategy that we can be a part of. Specifically, we're starting with $4 million that's already in the pot, and we hope to add to that on an annual basis. If it grows, in 10 years to 40 million, that's fantastic for this effort, because we need it, because this is the way, again, in developing permanent supportive housing, that ends homelessness. We know that. The key is that affordable housing on the level of 12.5% of area median income or something like that, that's the level of SSI. People on SSI can't afford approximately $240, $50 a month rent. That's what really we're looking for, to be able to do, including the services that go along with it. And later I'll explain some housing examples where we're doing just that. So this is the pool that is started, and we hope to continue to grow it jurisdiction-wide all throughout the county. And Palo Alto is already looking at setting aside some money. Fantastic. I would hope that Palo Alto will become a part of this effort. The next handout is the one on homeless encampment response, where it says draft all across it. This has these three components. As I said, that outreach, the housing and services column that you see there. We want any outreach effort to be integrated with the plan of housing and connecting people to services and all of that. And we're very sensitive to, because wherever there are encampments, wherever, be it in a creek or on the street, wherever, there are serious environmental issues, and we have to address those as well. Like the hotline, that is a way of engaging the community to become involved in not just complaining, but to be a part of the solution and responding to folks, try to help. Engaging the community is a very important part of being able to address encampment issues or people on the streets, et cetera, again, in an effective way. Now, and I know I'm going through a lot of information very quickly because I want to have time for questions if you have them, but there's just a lot to share, so I want to continue. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. The next handout that you have is some specific funding for the different population of housing, the reentry folks. And this is hot in the news, even today, the proposal on the state about the people leaving the jails, Governor Brown's proposal, and the state legislators coming together to try to do something. This is hot, as I'm sure you know very well. And so, what the county has done is set aside $4 million over the 2-year allocation, according to what you see there in that fifth column from the left. And so we're trying to reach out and house people who are re-entering from the criminal justice system, be they AB 109 folks or 3-strike folks or whatever.
I need to explain AB 109.
Sure. AB 109, those are the folks that were, a couple of years ago, were released from the state prisons to the local communities, not on parole, but on probation, to the local jail systems and the Department of Corrections systems in each county. And our county has received from all prisons from all over the state hundreds and hundreds of these folks. And so the second page, you'll see that $4 million does not include what's already been spent on here, it's on the back of that, excuse me, AB 109 Rental Assistance Program, the Reentry Supportive Shelter Program, AB 109 THUs, etc. These are programs that I'm involved right now in the first two in directing them.
Can you explain what a THU is?
Transitional Housing Units.
Okay.
Thank you. And excuse me, if I use lingo, please forgive me and don't hesitate to interrupt. And so these are programs that are already in place, and what you see on the first page, that $4 million, is in addition to all that other good stuff that's happening right now already. And so in the regional one, the very first one, that Regional Community Reintegration Initiative, 60 units, 20 in each part of the county, 20 in North County, 20 in Central County, 20 in South County, whereby be it the community working group working together with the Northern County Alternative Sentencing Program to determine who the most critical people who are homeless are in the community that are part of the criminal justice system. And so these are efforts to house those folks, get them services and to house them, both. There are the two groups, North County and South County are already working on this, Central County not yet. In South County, I'm in charge of that, Sue's in charge of the North County folks working together. In South County, we've already identified 50 people, and we prioritize them according to different needs, et cetera. And so, and North County is in the process of doing the same. And so, it's a great source of opportunity for us to be able to, again, respond concretely and helpfully to these folks. The Custody Health High Users Initiative will house 15 people through Custody Health. The people in the Department of Corrections are identifying people along with the people in the mental health part of the jails to see who their highest users are, and people who are going to be about to be released that can be helped and housed through this particular program. Rapid rehousing for families with children. We're looking at housing and preventing homelessness to maybe 40 families annually. Depends upon how we fund the rental assistance to these folks, et cetera, in terms of the number of people that we serve. So I've written the RFP for that, and so it's going to be released soon, probably by the end of September, that's the goal. And we'll go from there with that. The Homeless Prevention Emergency Assistance, likewise, we'll probably do an RFP for that as well, and that's to be worked on. The next big one, the solutions for 290. 290s are sexual offenders, and the sad part about that is, two big sad parts. One, they're the hardest population to house because of regulations of where they can or cannot be housed. And the second sad part about that population is it includes the range from people urinating in public to people who molest children in the worst ways. And it's just sad that it includes all of those. And so there's going to be, we're going to be coordinating a study that will be able to help concretely figure out the best ways to house these folks. And I'm sure that over a couple of years, we won't spend all that $1 million that's dedicated, and so maybe that will also be a part of housing. I don't know yet. We haven't started that, but it's an exciting venture that we're a part of that is so needed in our community, because a lot of those offenders coming out of the jails, as you can imagine, they're not violent folks, but they're 290s because they're registered, as urinating in public or something as stupid as that. It's sad. It's hard. And the last one, coordination and contingency. Abode Services is the program, the agency that we're utilizing to cut a lot of the rent checks and deal with landlords, identifying places to live that we're housing all these folks in all of these programs that you see here and others as well. So this is a specific, wonderful opportunity that the county is creating to be able to respond to a segment of the homeless need in our county. The next handout that you have is one that's near and dear to my heart also, as all of these are, is the Mental Health Department's Housing Opportunities Update. It looks like this. This is, I've helped develop with nonprofit housing developers all of these different projects. These are projects funded by the Mental Health Services Act funding. That's a tax that was passed in 2004 on millionaires' salary, $1 million gross salary a year, and that tax is levied and then income distributed to counties all throughout the state for new services for people with mental illness, and part of those services is housing. For our county, $21 million was set aside for this purpose. And so we first of all created the Housing Plus Fund, where we've been able to set aside 37 units at those 2 housing sites in San Jose. And we are constantly housing folks in those units. There's more turnover at Kirtner than Paseo, but we, almost daily I receive applicants for those units.
Excuse me, is that the Kirtner Studios on Kirtner in San Jose or the Kirtner in Palo Alto?
Kirtner in San Jose.
Okay.
701 West, or East, West Kirtner. The MHSA housing, for these projects that you see listed in those various bullets, from Bella Vita Santa Clara to Bella Terra Senior Apartments in Morgan Hill, how we do that is all the MHSA funding is part of the funding to develop affordable housing in all of these different places. And right around the corner, I was so close to having that Alma family, Alma Place, be a part of this development, but the developer at the very last moment said they didn't want to work with us as they had for a long time. But anyway, I had 10 units there, but they said no, they didn't want it after all. But anyway, and so the aim is to get units dedicated to this population, homeless or at risk of homeless or chronically homeless, people with mental illness. Number of units dedicated to them in each of the different housing complexes that you see listed here. Bella Vita has 25 units and 3 of them. Fair Oaks has 120 and 18. Kings Crossing has 90 something, and they have 10, et cetera, et cetera. And the status of the wait list is mentioned here as well for all of the different sites. We just opened 2, and one in Gilroy and one in Bella Terra that are filling up. Then right underneath that, you see the 4 that are in process, 2 in Sunnyvale, 1 in San Jose, 2 in San Jose, Ford Monterey and Donner Loss, and the Armory Family Housing and the Armory Parkside Studios, the other Armory housing there. That's at the on the site of the Sunnyvale Armory, which poses a whole separate issue for us, not just Sunnyvale, but the entire North County region, to figure out, okay, what are we going to do, since only 46 or 47 units at this site will be permanent housing units for the homeless, more than just what you see here for mental health folks. There's other funding dedicated for other units for the homeless. Well, at the Armory, during the cold weather shelter time, there's 125, 130 every night. And so this is part of the solution, we know, but we have to do more to be continued in terms of that conversation. And on the back of that page, you'll see other projects that I have developed and worked on for mental health, for homeless people addicted to alcohol, and what I mentioned earlier, the rental assistance program for 63 folks that are high users of county services. And all that the first 2 are already up to capacity, the second 2 have begun. We've started housing folks. The last handout that I have is, again, part of the big picture. We're mandated by HUD to have what's called a continuum of care, and that for years has been, as Minka mentioned, the Collaborative on Affordable Housing and Homeless Issues that meets monthly, the steering committee. That has been the organizer of the 37 programs that are funded by HUD annually, and new ones added to that almost every year. Now HUD is mandated, we got to change things around, and so this is an explanation of how we are doing that. There's a process in place to have a governance structure that is different from the current collaborative structure. There's an entity that's called Destination Home, and it has a leadership board that is comprised of some movers and shakers that have been wonderful in being able to help us get some money to bear to help solve homelessness in our community. And so part of this governance structure involves augmenting that particular board to be the board of this new governance structure, being augmented by a formerly homeless person and some other individuals that will be selected within a month or so. So this just gives you that background in terms of that governance structure as we're in the process of working on it. Currently, about this, the county is what's called the collaborative applicant. We're responsible, and I've been the head of that for years, for basically gelling all of these applications, at least 37, throughout the county into one application and then sending it off to HUD to get funded, $10 to $11 million a year, including any new projects that we come up with. So I know I've shared a lot, and you have a lot of questions. That's fine. Whatever your time will bear, I'm here. And Sue as well.
So I have a question on temporary shelters. In the first document you shared with us, I see there were about 2,000 people in temporary shelters, 5,500 not in shelters. My first question would be, is there a huge shortage of temporary shelter, or is that also part that some of these people don't want to go in shelters in the first place? Can you
Absolutely
explain a bit of the situation?
Sure. And you're right in terms of the numbers. People who have been, just looking at a summary of the entire county, unsheltered includes on the street or abandoned buildings, cars, and encampment areas. The 74% are unsheltered in the count that we did in January, and so 26% sheltered. So to answer your question, a lot of the people that we've been able to really know this for sure don't want to be in shelters for different reasons for each person. When the outreach teams reach out to them, et cetera, and it would be amazing, and I've done it myself, when you see the different structures that they create on a riverbank, et cetera, that's their home, and they don't like the rules in the shelter, or they have pets, shelters don't allow pets, or a variety of reasons with each person or family that's out there. And the car situation, as has already been alluded to, is part of the scene. And so there aren't enough shelter beds. And a lot of people, not everybody that's on the street, I'm not saying that at all, a number of people on the streets don't want to be in the shelters, or can't be in the shelters, or have worn out their welcome in the shelters because of rules infractions, et cetera. So there aren't enough, but at the same time we know getting more shelters, et cetera, is not the answer. Affordable housing is the answer. And what exacerbates the issue as well is there's very little to no funding out there that's dependable on an ongoing basis for shelter. And the previous funds that were there, like the Emergency Shelter Grant Program, ESG, that's being changed, or has been changed. It can be there, but it's, again, even the pots that were there are no longer there, or are changing their emphasis to support this approach that we know works, permanent supportive housing.
Yeah, but when you say that temporary shelter is a necessary step in the direction of permanent housing, and that maybe it might be worthwhile putting more efforts in that area, plus you can have a larger impact because it's less expensive, obviously, than permanent housing.
It's more expensive.
More expensive per person?
When you look at the people that are not housed and homeless and what they have to be spent on services all throughout the county, it's more expensive to keep somebody homeless, including what's in a shelter, versus housing them for a year. Proven.
No. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And one last question.
And one other thing, if I may. I lost the thought.
Okay, maybe we'll come back.
Well,
One last question.
Let some of the other commissioners.
Oh, okay, sure.
Does someone else have a question or comment?
Can you explain why that is, that people living on the streets is costing the county or the cities more money than people in shelters?
Oh, sure. And currently, Other counties have done that, most notably the city of San Francisco, city county of San Francisco have done that, and so we've gotten figures from them, and we are currently in the process of doing that same study here. So we know it costs to house somebody in a supportive housing situation for a year, approximately $12,000 to $15,000 per person. For that same person who's not housed, we know for a fact, we've seen studies in LA and in other cities, that, okay, the people who are unsheltered access other services more frequently. Emergency room, emergency psych, regular day, hot medical care, et cetera, and those are the most expensive services. And so comparatively, it's $62,000+ per year for that versus housing. We know for a fact if they're housed with support, their utilization of other services goes down.
So we wanted to have permanent supportive housing as part of intervention, but also stability. So the studies have proven that when people actually have that permanent supportive housing, it provides stability for them.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you back here?
It provides, sorry, I don't have a life. It provides stability in their life, that their utilization of services goes down as a regular person with house or the permanent homes.
And to respond to your question, I remember my other thought. What we know is a model that works as well is what's called housing first. Not to use a shelter or transitional housing as stepping stones. Okay, they gotta do here before they get an apartment to be on their own or whatever. No, get them immediately into the housing and then help them address the issues that they have been putting on hold for years because they've been in crisis mode, and life preservation mode. Where they haven't been able to deal with substance abuse, mental illness, or whatever, which sometimes has been the cause of homelessness, and it's just a vicious circle. And so housing first is the approach that the county has adopted, and other jurisdictions have as well, and we want to continue to support that.
For years, people couldn't access services unless they're clean, right? That was the old models, right? But people who are homeless, it's just really almost impossible for them to have that kind of clean environment by themselves, right? It's asking for too much. And so we decided, okay, if you have a supportive, stable housing, then they could start stability in their life with that, right?
And it takes a lot of work. That's why the case management support level is 1 to 20. It's a lot of work for this population.
So what is the relationship between what you're doing in San Jose and Palo Alto? Is Palo Alto part of this effort? Anyway, it sounds like there were some barriers to getting units in Palo Alto.
Invite them to be part of this.
I'm sorry, speak up, please.
So we want to invite Palo Alto to be part of this effort, this whole big system.
That's why the community working group is, they have responded to the council, and the council has interacted with them. And even before that whole dynamic that happened recently that was occasioned by the issues at Cooperly and the car ordinance, et cetera, the North County Alternative Sentencing Program has been in operation for years. And so we want to invite the two groups together, not to be at cross purposes, but to work on this together to see, what we know works. Complementary efforts.
Can you clarify, what are the two groups? What are the counties involved? The cities involved, the two different groups?
The two groups I'm referencing is the community working group, which, and Minka's well aware of this, is made up of the board members of the community working group that helped develop the Opportunity Center in Palo Alto. And in addition to that, Envision Shelter Network, the shelter, I forget the name, in East Palo Alto, Project We Hope.
Downtown Streets Team.
Downtown Streets Team.
Healthcare Connections.
All of those different groups are working together in trying to respond to the council's efforts to say, hey, we got to do something more constructive to end homelessness in Palo Alto.
Okay, I got it. I thought it was different by different cities, different.
Well, different cities are doing different things as well, and we're just, like I said, what we're doing in South County, in Gilroy and Morgan Hill, I've been working with them for years, and now we have this new pot of money for people who are involved with the criminal justice system, and this just fits right in. But they also have a compassion center that they have developed for services for the homeless. But that's, different jurisdictions are doing different things. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're running well over time, and we
Yeah,
have
I'm
several
sorry.
cards from that. No, not at all, you've been wonderful. So I'd like to go ahead and invite members of the public who submitted cards. The first one, Aaron James?
Is that
Yes.
related to this or no?
Yeah, they're on
Oh,
this side.
oh, okay.
So I'd like to ask a few questions during my 3 minutes. Bob, I just wanted to clarify one thing. Retired public defender, urinating in public is not a 290 offense. It has to be indecent exposure, which is very different, requires a sexual intent. So I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify
but
that.
it can be,
Well,
depends upon
simply
the
because
intent.
you're urinating, no, if you're exposing yourself with a sexual intent, then it becomes a registrated
Thank you.
offense. Okay, so, one of the questions I've got is, do you think taking people who are living in their vehicles and pushing them out of their vehicles onto the streets assists in this problem, or it hurts?
It doesn't help, for sure.
Doesn't help at all. Okay. Now, in reference to Palo Alto, you're saying that you have reached out to the city of Palo Alto in an effort to get them to collaborate with the county, is that accurate?
Yes.
Can you describe for us what you specifically have done and your colleague to get Palo Alto to work with the county and why they've rejected that collaboration?
They have not rejected the collaboration. Sue can address this. She is, as I said, the one working in North County
Thank you.
about this.
Yeah, it's a so first of all, I've been in this position a month, so I'm new in this role. But this new pot of money has just started, so we're beginning, and so we are working right now
Give me
together.
this, because there's a lot of information. What is the specific pot of money that you're referring to?
We're referring to the criminal justice system.
The AB 109 monies?
The reentry monies.
The AB 109 monies?
It was broader than AB
October-
109.
Okay, well, October of 2011 was when AB 109 went into effect, am I correct? So you're saying since then, I know the governor and the state assembly have come up with something just this week, but are we talking about something post AB 109, additional monies
Yeah.
coming from the state?
Yeah.
What specific statute are we referring to?
It's, the source, that handout that I was explaining, that $4 million, that is additional money.
Okay, and that's, a part of that Palo Alto should be entitled to in your estimation?
No, not, well, they are, that's how we've organized it. North County, including Palo Alto.
And how much does Palo Alto, right now, what are they entitled to beginning, and what is that money specifically supposed to go for in terms of?
Housing,
Okay, and what kind of housing specifically?
okay? The 2-year allocation for all 60 units of rent subsidy for all 3 parts of the county, so more or less you can divide this 1.555 million over 2 years by 3. So it involves rental subsidies and permanent housing and/or some transitional housing.
So for Palo Alto's
However each jurisdiction decides.
Okay, who in the jurisdiction of Palo Alto would be given the authority to determine how that money would be used?
All right, I'm sorry. So Mr. James, if you want to follow up offline with.
No,
this one,
I'm
that's fine.
happy to do it in public, thank you though.
All right, our next speaker is Lynn Hudekoper.
Hi.
Hi,
I have a couple of questions. Who does the outreach?
Okay,
Really
okay.
be addressing the.
Yeah, I wanted to just say, it's usually not that the audience grills our speakers for us. Usually you speak on the topic to the commission.
Okay.
So I'm a
I'll
little
do
bit
that.
concerned, I don't want these folks to be on the hot seat.
Don't worry.
Okay, sounds good.
So, yeah, if you want to just talk to the commission.
But within our 3 minutes, it's valuable.
Yeah, anyway, I have plenty to say. Excuse me. Bob is, and I appreciate his presentation. I mean, what a huge problem, and to have to, homelessness is on the increase in America, and the problem is, as I understand it, in Santa Clara County, there are 53 vouchers that are available for low-income housing. However, they are not able to use them because the landlords are increasing the rent. There was a huge demonstration about this at City Hall a couple of weeks ago by people who just can't get the housing. So when you talk about there's housing, there isn't. Unfortunately, the landlords, one woman had her rent increased $900, and also the We Hope shelter, I have found out, was gonna provide services like sleeping and showers. They can't until they get the funding for a staff person to be there to monitor when the showers are being taken. So although Reverend Bain did say to Liz and the city council that there was this resource, there is no resource at the present time. I've been there a couple of times when they were closed, it said that we're full, no beds. So I think I heard that possibly in October, they might be able to help people here who would be interested in the shelter. But like you said, there are many that have had bad experiences in shelters. Like I heard about a woman who got raped and people steal their belongings and stuff, so not everybody wants to be in one. And then the whole SB2 thing that requires every city to have an emergency shelter designation. And Palo Alto, unfortunately, the land that's designated is already taken by car dealerships, businesses, Google and stuff. So on the housing element, they kind of need to relook at that. I went to, Menlo Park just had a whole thing on the housing element for the homeless. And they included the citizens in the decision. They had spent a lot of money. They put these huge, boards up showing 5 areas in Menlo Park where potentially an emergency homeless shelter could be built. And we'd have to comment on them. I mean, I picked one that was out of the residential because you could tell there were people there worried about their property values going down and stuff. But they spent the money to include citizens in the dialogue. And there's another one coming up October 17th. I was very impressed that my city took the effort to get the people's input of where they think, if and when. The only problem, that bill had no teeth in it. It was just they have to designate a piece of land.
Your 3 minutes is up, but thank you very much for your remarks. Our next speaker is Nick Selby. Nick Selby?
Yes. Hi, good evening.
So you have 3 minutes, sir.
I just wanted to say a few brief things. First, as a resident of Palo Alto for the last 40-some years, I was very interested in the decision of the city council whether to adopt the ban on vehicle dwelling or living in your car. And I followed all the discussions of the Policy and Services Committee and the City Council. It's not hard to arrive at the conclusion. It's very complex and difficult. But nonetheless, after a lot of thought and consideration, I'd just like to say to the Human Relations Commission, I found their vote extremely disappointing. I don't think it was the right thing for them to do, and I listened. I tried to be as dispassionate as possible, and I just think it was the wrong decision. But fortunately, thanks to the questions of Mr. James, you have the opinion of an expert tonight, and thank you very much, Bob, for giving it, frankly and candidly. It doesn't help. It really doesn't help. I know they're trying to do a lot of things, and I'll give them the best of good faith in what they're trying to do. I understand the arguments that vehicle dwelling should not be our end goal. We should have a better end goal. We should have permanent housing be the end goal. And that's where our energies should be directed. But there are always going to be people who cannot immediately get into permanent housing. And there are always going to be people who can't get into Hotel de Zinc, which Palo Alto Friends Meeting, of which I'm a member, has been sponsoring for 15 years. There are always going to be people who can't get into the Opportunity Center. We don't have enough space in the Armory. There are always going to be people who can't get into the Armory. In other words, there are always going to be people who, if they are lucky enough to have cars, will probably have to live in their cars. And for the city to have taken the step of criminalizing that even if they only give citations and don't prosecute as misdemeanors, it's not helpful. And I think Bob told you. So you could take my word as, this is what a citizen of the city thinks, a resident of the city thinks. The expert told you, this isn't helpful. And I would really hope that the Human Relations Committee could voice that back to the city council. They have the opportunity to take a step back from enforcing that, and they should. It's not helpful. I know they want to solve the problem. We all want to solve the problem. That's why we're here and discussing this. But they didn't have to do that, and they shouldn't have done it. So thank you.
Thank you. Very, very, very well put.
All right, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Stephanie Munoz.
Oh, yes.
And I just want to mention too that we're drifting a little bit off topic. So when you asked to speak, we just had a presentation on affordable housing. If you want to comment on that, that's your 3-minute time. But this other issue of Coverly, that's actually not on the agenda. Although I understand that to many of you it's very, very close to your hearts, and it's definitely a related issue. But please try to stay on point with what we discussed tonight. Ms. Munoz?
Well,
I've got one.
Yeah, extremely on point.
yes, I thought you were on point.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's regarding the reaction, not questions, but to the presentation by Bob Dulce specifically, not if it's just specifically regarding the city's decision on something that isn't on the agenda tonight.
I understand, Mika, but there's a disagreement here, and I think the audience, as citizens, can tell you what Nick Selby just said was extraordinarily on point.
I'd agree.
Well, fortunately, it's my turn, so I get to say, I'd like to double down on that guy, what he said. It is appropriate for this reason. The Palo Alto City Council refuses to recognize that people sleeping in their cars and going to a public place where there is safety is part of the solution. It's part of what you're trying to do, and we're trying to do. And it has been simply so preposterous that the city of Palo Alto and the councilmen, who are very decent people and intelligent and anything you could want in a council. I don't know what's going on in their minds, but it is simply wrong to tell people that they can't sleep in their cars. And it's also wrong to not acknowledge that it's productive and useful for them to assemble peaceably during certain hours, regulated, registered, and we hope, what we want is that because you have some clout with these governmental agencies, you're dedicated, you spend all this time, and they respect you. And they don't have a hell of a lot of respect for me, or Aram, or Dulce, or Lynn, or Lois. Please, if you could see how important you are to with all this work, many hours that you've put in this year, but if you could see that gives you the right to tell them, and they have to listen, and they're not listening to us, please.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Our next speaker is Carrie Andrew Crittenden.
Hi there, yeah, I wasn't expecting Mr. Dulce to be here, and I wasn't familiar with this agenda item. I understand that Mr. Dulce's prepared quite a bit of documentation. I haven't been able to review that. I just haven't had the time and the chance. I'm concerned about, you did mention there's $40 million that was allocated to the county?
No. For that affordable housing fund, it started, and the hope is in 10 years to have 40.
Oh, I got you, and that's allocated into, what was it, 37 programs?
No, an affordable housing fund for the development of affordable housing for the homeless and others. But the other, what you're referencing is every year we get at least $10 to $11 million from HUD to help 37 other programs that help the homeless now.
Okay, I got it. And the HUD funding, would that, is that specific grant money or?
Yes.
Okay. Is the county mandated to, I mean, do you have a mandated use to how the money's spent?
For all of those 37 programs, the answer is yes.
Okay, so, but would there be specific mandates for the county to be eligible for the funding? Like, I know, for example, there's like HUD subsidized apartment complexes, and if they were to receive funding, they'd have to abide by all the federal laws and everything to receive the funding. Would the county be obligated to follow by the same rules and regulations?
Yes.
Okay, my concern is that there's been some recent problems with the county, not you, I'm not putting you on the hot seat. It's with the public guardian's office. One of the situations was recently featured on ABC News where Deputy Public Guardian Arlene Peterson was caught doing a reverse mortgage scheme. There's at least three cases, probate court files, which have HUD violations. Violations of the Fair Housing Act. Heidi was evicted from a HUD subsidized apartment complex by the public guardian's office facilitating the eviction. And what they did was they created a fraudulent court record and then abused their power of attorney, power over Heidi, who was conserved, to shut down her HUD complaint and to prevent her from pursuing cause of action and preserving the fraudulent court record that was made. And I'm concerned, I mean, you know, that is a factor, how it's a serious issue. I don't know how much it would actually contribute to the homeless problem. I'm concerned that, I like that to be acknowledged and addressed by the county, whoever, and you're in charge of homeless services, so I'm bringing that to your attention. And I'm also concerned that, though I haven't seen the paperwork or anything, that this may maybe directly or indirectly affect the county's eligibility for future HUD funding. Okay, well, just wanted it brought up. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Crittenden.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Chuck Yagoda.
Jagoda, yes. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. As a person who's lived in the Armory the last couple of winters, I gotta tell you, the basic problem of homelessness is lack of resources. We agree on that? Subtracting resources is never helpful. So if you have 47 units that are permanent housing out of that area that Armory is in right now, but there are 150 people that no longer have a place to go sleep at night, that's subtracting resources. As this gentleman, some of the questions, people were asking you, how come it's better to, you know, put up some permanent housing but take away the temporary shelter. You gave an answer about the comparison, how much more expensive it is for somebody to not have a home and use up, you know, resources, and you're right about that, but that's not really responsive to that question. As you implied with your answer, it's not helpful to subtract resources, whether it's Coverly, whether it's me being able to sleep in my vehicle, not at Coverly, whether it's those, the Armory. Those are all subtractions of resources from a situation where there are very few in the first place. Not good. In fact, if one were to imagine an intent here, one might assume the intent was to make it as hard as possible on the homeless. And I might add, for you all's children and friends and relatives, and possibly even you someday. A lot of us didn't really go to college so that we could be homeless. We got here, we got here not because that was such a great career plan, although now it is, you know, because you can't, when you're broke, the most expensive thing in the world is your housing. So you subtract that. You sleep in your van or on the ground or in shelters. If you happen to be lucky enough to live amongst people who are farsighted enough. I love Palo Alto, it's a great place. There's more brains and willpower and money here than 7 other countries. Why didn't somebody get the idea about all this 10 years ago? I mean, really? You can't, this is only now coming up to people? I can't believe that. And I can't believe that people half as intelligent as you all in the city council actually think that by offering enhanced services to the people at Coverly, you're somehow compensating for taking away a home. It's not a great home, but you try you just ask yourself, would you rather spend the night in your car or on the ground? There are homeless women who are not gonna go in shelters because they're more afraid of those shelters than the abusive relationships they're escaping. And they are only happy or semi-secure when they can lock the four doors of their car at night. You take that away and then go home and sleep, talk to your wife, tell her this is what you've done for women and the world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And our final speaker is Edie Keating.
Thank you. So as I listen to the city council talk about interacting with the county to be part of, as I understand it, the reentry program, there is $50,000 that the city would need to provide to participate in that. And so, I'm curious, and it's up to the chair, of course, how I can get a response to this, but curious what other cities have done, if they had similar requirements to participate, and does that, it was put out as a 2-year fee, and does that provide ongoing supportive housing for the people who get housed? And also, do we not get our support from the HUD funds if we don't contribute from the city that $50,000? So there's one question that I hope you'll explore. And then the other is that we've talked to Santa Barbara, and they have a safe parking program where they have designated lots where car dwellers can sleep. And we asked them what their funding was, and they said mostly from HUD. And so, I'm just wondering if you have any comments about, where that, kind of what bucket of HUD that comes from. Is that from that 37, what you're using now to support the multiple programs, that continuum of care? So in other words, I'm curious, honestly, how we could replicate that and whatever.
Well, if you're willing to give up a little bit of your time, Bob has offered to answer your questions. So is that okay?
Great,
Okay,
yeah.
go ahead, Bob.
First of all, the bucket of money that you referenced of the city of Palo Alto for the money that is used for the reentry programs that I described, 20 units in North, South, and Central. All of the jurisdictions that are working on identifying people for those units have to come up somehow with the supportive services dollars to go with that. And so that is why NCAS, the Northern County Alternative Sentencing Program, with the community working group, working together to come up with a plan to do just that. Okay. That's one. Secondly, that pot of money has nothing to do with HUD. That's part of the beauty of it. It's very flexible in how we determine, how we use it. So that's
okay.
Fantastic. Third, the parking program that you mentioned, I'm familiar with different programs like that in different places, but specifically for Santa Barbara, I'm not sure where they're funded. But what could be the case, it could be from the continuance pot of money in that respective county. It would be called what's a service-only project. We have, in this county, we have one of those, and anytime there's an available pot of money that the county can apply for from HUD, we've determined in the last several years that we want to apply for subsidies for housing, permanent housing, and we've done that successfully. I've personally been involved with many of those. So that's my guess to answer your question. And it would be, if it is a services-only project, it would be responsible to HUD for all the regulations, et cetera.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Bob, you've been incredibly kind, generous with your time, as have you. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming tonight. Thank you, audience, for participating.
Happy to be here.
And we are so over time on this agenda item that
I'm
we're
sorry.
going to have to close it out. No, don't be sorry, we've learned an incredible amount, but we have to move on to the business. Thank you so much.
Very welcome, my pleasure.
We may be following up with you on some questions.
Come again?
We may be following up with you on some questions.
Feel free to do so.
Thank you, Bob.
Mika knows how to get.
Yes. And moving on to our next agenda item, we're going to hear a report from Consuelo Hernandez on the CDBG report.
It's not supposed to, you guys have to send it out, yes.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the Human Relations Commission, Consuelo Hernandez, CDBG Planner. Tonight I bring before you the city's Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, which is required under the HUD rule for any CDBG entitlement grantee. And previously, in previous years, we've kind of just presented the report to you and taken any questions, but this year we thought it'd be a really good idea to kind of take the accomplishments of the year and present them to you in a presentation, and then show you one of the projects that we are near completion for fiscal year 13. The commission actually approved this project in 2011, but experienced some delays in hiring an architect and then subsequently hiring a contractor. The other thing that we're really working on with our CDBG program, because HUD is cutting the funding and Palo Alto is always at risk of losing the funding, we're looking at providing and promoting a program that's transparent and that uses images to illustrate what we use our money for. So these are just some of the highlights, and we have 5 different funding categories that we choose from. These are just 3 of the funding items that we have for fiscal year 13. The first is for public services, and these are services that we fund for the Housing Corporation, the Opportunity Center, domestic violence services, fair housing, and these are just some of the accomplishments that occurred during the year, which includes 1,646 unduplicated individuals that received services at the Opportunity Center. Those services include showers, case management, the Breaking Bread program, participants of the Hotel de Zing project. And then under our housing project, our housing funding category, we support the rehabilitation of existing affordable housing units to preserve and conserve so that we promote healthy environments for people to live in. And that's one of the examples we'll be going into tonight. And the third category that we wanted to highlight is our economic development efforts. In previous years, Palo Alto hasn't really focused on workforce development or in economic development. And during fiscal year 13, 24 unemployed individuals who were previously homeless or very low income re-entered the workforce. And that is really a big accomplishment for our pilot program. It's the second year that we have this program, and we're still working with Downtown Streets team in fiscal year 14. So the project that we wanted to show you tonight is Alma Garden. It's owned by Community Working Group. And through CDBG, we fund multifamily rehabilitation projects. And as an entitlement city, we have to abide by HUD rules. And one of the sources of funding one of the ways that we use our funding is, again, to conserve the condition of affordable housing. And this is a 10-unit building. Sorry, there's 3 buildings, 10 units. And we assisted CWG through CDBG and through our housing funds to acquire the property. I believe it was in 2009. And so now we're helping them, we help them with the rehabilitation work. And I know it's hard to see just from these images the work that we do, and it's not just paint that we put up. And I would invite you to go to the site and take a look at it. And what you have here is we re-roofed all of the structures.
Oh, Consuelo, can you give us the site?
It's, I believe, 2709 Alma. Okay. Or 2509 Alma. And here we re-roofed the structures, and the material on the roof is the one that is the most efficient and environmentally, so that the units stay cool. There was a different color that we wanted to choose, or CDBG wanted to choose, but they chose this brown color because it helps maintain the units cooler. We replaced all of the windows with low E glass. I can't tell you too much more about the paint other than the color is different. They resurfaced all of their concrete area. And this particular unit had 3 windows in that lower portion, and so we filled those in again to provide a better living environment for the tenant that was there. We painted all of the exterior buildings, and here there was water that would settle in this area because of the concrete, and so we resurfaced all of that area, and so now the water will go out according to the way that it's supposed to. And here they also did some light seismic retrofit, which you can't see. But if you pay attention to the handrails at the top, you'll notice that there's a thicker bar. So those are little things that we do. And then the other items, you just can't see them because they're behind the building. And just wanted to show you one of the projects that you approve when we bring the CDBG budget before you. And we're hoping to bring some more of these items to you every year. And then also starting to think about bringing you just some of the stories of the people people that we help fund through this program. Again, to showcase it, to show HUD that in fact this program is very important in Palo Alto and it's highly needed. So I'll take any questions that you may have on the report, and also ask that you open a public hearing in case the public has any comments on the report.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask about the pilot program, because I remember when we funded, it was a little bit controversial. I mean, it wasn't, well, maybe not controversial, but we were a little bit up in the air, taking kind of a risk. So it sounds like it's gone very well so far. Can you share any more details about the 24 individuals who transitioned to employment?
Sure, and just as a point of clarification, is it for the Downtown Streets Team Workforce Development or the Micro Enterprise Assistance?
The Micro Enterprise.
So that we funded for fiscal year 14.
So it hasn't happened
it
yet.
hasn't happened yet, and we are really actively working on that project, and we're looking at potentially bringing you an update in January.
Okay, so the 24 individuals were all part of the downtown
Yes,
streets
the
team.
workforce development.
So can you share any details? Are there any particular success stories that you're aware of?
Not particularly, not for specific individuals. I wish the Downtown Streets team could be here, but I can definitely put something together and pass it on to Linda that she can. But that's one of the things that we're also working on, is that our annual reports don't allow for these types of narratives and anecdotal stories to be part. We just report on the numbers, and so we're working with our applicants to really highlight the stories of the individuals that we help.
Very great.
Is that the exact report you submit to HUD?
Yes, so this is a draft of what they asked for.
You
They asked-
lucky person.
So they ask for very specific narratives, and they have a checklist that you have to follow. And the reports that are attached are populated through IDIS, which is a HUD mandated online system that we have to use. And we can't manipulate the numbers or the way that the format looks.
I see. And do you have indications that they read it and ask questions after? They do get back?
They're required to read it, and then we receive a certification letter after it's submitted, letting us know whether it's, if they have any questions or if they have improved it on the subject.
Are there any other comments or questions for Consuelo?
You were saying before that, Alma, that I wasn't clear who did the work. CDBG funded it, but who actually received the funds?
CWG. CWG is Community Working Group, I'm sorry. Community Working Group is the recipient of the funds, and we assist them with the administration. Because of the funding source, it requires federal procurement guidelines, and a lot of the nonprofit agencies aren't as familiar with those procedures, so we step in to help with the bid, preparing bid documents, interviewing contractors, and all of the other requirements that HUD has.
That's what I thought. 'Cause I'm part of the CWG, so I wasn't sure whether you were taking over stuff that
No.
we were doing.
Not at all. So the project, the physical construction work was completed in June, I believe June 26th, but it's required to pay federal wages, so the Davis Bacon Act has to be complied with, and we're just pending one issue in order to actually close the project out. So the reporting of this project isn't in this paper, but we chose to highlight it because of the other projects aren't as dramatic as this one.
Any other comments or questions for Consuelo before we open it up to the public?
Can I ask just one more question?
Sure.
And on page 9 of the report, section 2, affirmatively furthering fair housing. I couldn't tell whether fair housing and homelessness or providing housing were being used interchangeably? Or are you talking about fair housing in terms of discrimination for access to housing or providing housing so that there's more of it?
It's the discrimination. We fund Project Sentinel through this program to answer any questions of potential discrimination for tenants. They do ensure that any of the protected classes, that there's no violation of that.
Is that all that Project Sentinel does?
Under this agreement, yes, but they do other things for the city and countywide. I know that they run other programs, but we only report on the funding that we provide. I'm sorry, the services that we receive through this funding.
Since a lot of what we talked about tonight was about homelessness, do they do work to advise people about what housing options there might be or how to get Section 8 vouchers? Or?
No, that's not their role. Their role is to take in any potential cases of discrimination related to housing.
You said that's under the city grant. But what about other grants?
I'm not familiar with their other role. To my understanding, it's primarily for fair housing services.
Can I
And they're also the umbrella organization for a Palo Alto mediation program.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback on Commissioner McKenny's question, which is CDB, the community working group, could you describe that?
That's the group we talked about earlier was, it's Envision and the homeless task force and downtown streets team, all working together to.
Now, you're mixing two things.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Community working group is part of what's called the Homeless Services Task Force. And that's a new group that is in formation, so to speak. And Mila Mack is with Envision Shelter Network. She's a member of that group, I'm a member of that group. And item 6 on our agenda is a report on where they stand after their last meeting, which was a couple of days ago. So there's still a lot of work to be done to create the kind of collaborative framework where the kinds of things that Bob Bosey told us about can be brought to the north part of the county. We can be working both together in this area and with the county resources.
But maybe you can give a short, just one sentence of community working group itself. I think that might have been the commissioner's intent.
Community working group's been around for, I guess, a decade, and it was formed to create the Opportunity Center. And its primary task is to develop housing, low-income housing. It, with Eden Housing, developed the 801 Alto project, which will open soon, and it is responsible for 2 or 3 other housing developments, of which Allen Gardens is one of them. And so that's what it primarily does, but then now it is working with others because the housing and homelessness issue is so big and so complex that it's not going to be helpful if groups individually work at it without really the kind of collaborative and cooperative framework that it needs to make sense out of all that Bob was talking about. I was just amazed at the plethora of programs and how each one has specific things that it does and sources of money. So, but the logic of all of that and the coherence of all of that is a work in progress.
I was amazed by the coherence of how he presented it. I mean, you know, so I agree.
It was coherent in his head, whether it was coherent in the world. Another question.
Conciseness is possible.
All right,
A quick question. Trying to make sure I understand when some money is not entirely spent, like on a capital project, that's kind of common, you know, things can take longer. What happens to the money? Is it still available, and for how long?
Once the construction is complete and there is a balance in that grant, we reprogram it the next fiscal year. So when you look at your budget for fiscal year 15, you'll see an entitlement grant estimate, program income, and unprogrammed funds. Those unprogrammed funds include any balanced grants that we didn't spend.
But they have already started their project, so are they guaranteed that normally they'll get the balance or not?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Oh, it's guaranteed.
So it does get carried over. So that's why in this budget on page, in the executive summary, you'll have budgeted items. For the prior year project expenditures, we're only showing the balance when fiscal year 12 was closed out. We don't show the entire grant amount. So it does get continued over to the next year.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I think we'll open it up to the public. James, you're our speaker.
They technically say it's a public hearing.
Yes.
Oh,
That you're opening the
it's a public hearing and we're opening up.
Okay, hi Consuelo. I had a hard time hearing a lot of your presentation because the back was to us, and I understand why. Can you give me a little bit, you know, a lot of this is written in what I'd call bureaucratic speak, and so it's difficult to break down because that's not an area that I specialize in. So I'm understanding that the city is receiving monies to do repairs for low-income housing. Is that correct?
Well, technically, you should be addressing your comments and questions to us, Mr. James.
Well, you wouldn't be able to answer them.
I know, true.
So, and as I understand from this is to encourage, if you read what the public hearing is about, it's to encourage citizen participation and assessment of the CDBG program. Without being able to ask questions of somebody that's knowledgeable like Consuelo, it would be a hollow act to try to get information about it. So if I could proceed, I know Consuelo well, have a lot of respect for her, but I need to get some answers.
So are you okay with answering 3 minutes worth of questions?
She always has been. She's been very gracious. Whenever I've talked to her on the phone, we discussed the Santa Barbara program, a variety of things.
So I can answer quickly and then I can always email you more details.
Well, but this is a public hearing, and we're
Sure,
supposed to, so,
Okay, so let's give you your 3 minutes.
well, if you'll let me ask my question, then I would do that, but you keep interrupting me, it would be your word. So, now, how does this interplay with our struggle to end homelessness? What is this program about, not in bureaucratic speak, but in how you and I know?
Sure. So the city receives community development block grant funds from the department, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Every year, the city issues a notice of funding availability, where we put out an application, and anybody that's interested in receiving the funds or applying for the funds submits an application.
Okay, let me stop you right there. What's the parameters of eligibility, so that if I, make $100,000 a year, I assume I'm not eligible for that program?
That is correct.
What are the types, what are the parameters for applications for these programs?
So agencies apply for the funding, not individuals.
Okay, so what agencies right now have grants in the city of Palo Alto from your block
And
grant?
all of that is in that report. Envision Shelter Network receives funding for Opportunity Center. Palo Alto Housing Corp receives funding for their SRO resident support program.
Break down SRO, please.
Single room occupancy, so
Okay.
we have 2 single room occupancy at Alma Place and the Barker Hotel.
And the addresses for those?
I don't have them.
Downtown or on Alma, where are these units?
Alma Place is on Alma Street, and Hotel Barker is also in downtown Palo Alto, but I don't have the street.
How many units are on those 2 SROs?
I believe it's 121 total.
And who administers those particular SROs?
Palo Alto Housing Corporation.
Okay, and what percentage of the money goes to the programs, for the clients, these, as opposed to the administrators of the programs?
Say that one more time.
Yeah, there's money for the single resident occupancy units. There's over 110 of them that come from this block fund money. My question is, how much of the money goes to the clients and making sure they have secure housing? How much goes to the administrators of the programs?
Yeah, sorry, time is up. If you need to
Thank
follow up
you.
with Consuelo, please do so. Consuelo, thank you so much.
Do we have to approve the report? No, we don't, okay, just want to be sure.
Thank you, this item's closed. This item's
We've
closed.
got, listen, I'm a
Okay,
little,
that's
this is a
okay.
little
It's
strange to
maybe the
me.
next one
We're
will-
supposed to be encouraging on this one, a public hearing, this lady,
Yeah,
Ms.
so
Nunez.
Ms. Nunez has been here for like over an hour.
Well, but
She's
it's,
had plenty of time to-
but that's no reason,
No,
a
but
technical reason to stop
Well,
it.
it's, we're running very late with our meeting.
I
so-
understand, but this is a public hearing, and we're
Maybe
supposed to
you're
be able to
right.
ask questions about it. Only one person has been able to do that, it's me. I don't think that's fair to the rest of the audience.
No, she had
Maybe
plenty of
the next
opportunity to
one.
speak.
Let her speak.
Let her speak,
Maybe the
please.
next one. Maybe the next one, and it's a question.
Let me say one thing,
I
it
just
might
have a
clarify
question.
some things, and Consuelo, you can catch me on this. Mr. James is asking questions about where does this money go to people, to help people, rather than to buildings, to build the buildings.
Well, both, because buildings,
To maintain the buildings.
correct.
These buildings are built through a very complex set of where the resources come from. And the Community Working Group, Alto Housing Corporation, others have to put together the capital to either buy these or build them. And they need to be kept up. And so CDBG money goes to the repair and upkeep of some of these facilities. It doesn't go to, as Bob Dolce was talking about, supportive housing. It doesn't go to the supportive part, it goes to the housing part.
Gotcha.
So that's why I think you're frustrated that
I'm not frustrated, I just want to be able to ask
Money doesn't
questions about it.
money doesn't seem to go to people. I mean, it goes to people
I-
indirectly, but
I just don't want you to put words in my mouth. I'm not frustrated about it, I want to know, and you are being very helpful in providing that information. That's all.
All right, so Ms. Munoz, you're our next speaker.
It's a question, it's a genuine question, not a phony question, I really want to know. There's another situation here in Palo Alto. Years ago, before Barron Park, before the south of Palo Alto had been annexed, the county of Santa Clara permitted a trailer park to go in that had 125 units and some stick weighted to the ground houses also. And this, and the person, the owner now, who rents out the land to the trailer owners who have their own little houses, would like to be rezoned to something more lucrative, like building office buildings. And I had called the Housing Authority and the people in Sacramento, and the question I had to ask them, which I might ask you, because you may not know the answer, but you might know where to find it, is what is the state's policy about the retention of existing low-income housing? Because the policy seems to be divided in two, and it has to do with creating new low-income housing. It has to be a proportion of market rate units in a structure or complex. There has to be some proportion, it's 5 or 10%, it's some proportion that has to be low-income units, that's fine. But it doesn't say anything about the income units you already have. And when I asked them, I said, but Palo Alto is supposed to be having 1,000 units. What if they get rid of these? Oh, well, then they have to add those to the 1,000. Yes, but the requirement seems only to be houses, like as in $1 million houses, and doesn't seem to have anything to do with with affordable houses. And that's what I wish maybe you could find. There seems to be a sort of a discrepancy there, like a lacuna, a kind of a gap.
A missing link.
Yeah, and if you could find out before they evict the 400 people in their little houses, so that they don't have to evict because they don't have to upzone them. If you could, and when I asked the housing authority, it was Mr. Angel, he's the new one, he's taken over from Mr. Bloom. And I said, I'm really sorry that I'm not so sophisticated. Hey, I don't even know the difference between an ordinance and a law. All I know is these people have provided their own little houses. They're not asking for any state subsidy. They're minding their own business. They're not causing any trouble, and they are on the road to being evicted. So
Ms. Lynn, you're trying to say, but thank you very much for speaking.
Can you find out?
It's covered by a city ordinance, which means it's a law that pertains to Palo Alto, and it pertains to the closure of mobile home parks, and that's why it's different from the state regulations that you were looking into. So, yeah, so that's all we know, but there is a reason for it. Okay, we are done with this action item. Thank you so much for being here, Consuelo.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Consuelo.
Thank you for the success story, we needed that. All right, now we're going to move on to item 4, which is planning our joint session with the City Council. We missed our study session last year, so I think it's been a couple of years since we had the councils here. And in preparation for that, the subcommittee, which consists of myself, Ray, and our newest member, Commissioner Stone, put together a proposed presentation that we will, a draft presentation that we'll be giving to the City Council. So we'd like to review that, and it sounds like you want to say something. No. Oh, so we want to review that and get your input, and then revise the presentation accordingly. So that was emailed to you. I'm sorry it didn't make it into the packet because I was printing it. But there are copies up there. So, and actually I need a copy too. Can someone help me out? Even though I worked on it, you should have it memorized. Okay.
Is this the slide one?
Yeah, so well, right now it's in Word format because it's easier to do track changes and everything in Word. And then once we agree on this first draft, I'll go ahead and put it into a PowerPoint format. Before Commissioner Penny and I are meeting with the mayor and vice mayor early next week. And we'll do our preliminary pre-meeting, and then we will move on to the full meeting in October. And maybe can you remind us the date of the full meeting of the study session? Is it the 6th? I keep getting the date wrong, October 7th. Don't listen to me, listen to me. Okay, so I hope you've had a chance to review it, or if not, let's review it now. So I'll talk you through kind of the thought process. So what we wanted to do was begin by re-educating the council about our purpose and our mission, and our primary responsibilities. And so you'll see those are the first couple of sort of intro slides, and Commissioner McKetty kind of provided some of the official language that pertains to the HRC. So this is, again, just a sort of educational intro slide. And then slide 2 moves on to our primary responsibilities in the eyes of the council, which are the allocation of these two programs we hear about all the time, which are HISRAP and CDBG, and Dr. Consuelo was giving us a great update on CDBG tonight. So are there any questions or comments so far? You're all following along
So,
with the story?
on slide one, maybe if we go slide by slide.
Okay.
On slide one, I have one comment. I would strike out the word agency, because I don't think we are an agency, but more like an organization.
Okay. Okay.
Agency has kind of a specific meaning in terms of how you govern things. I think we're more like.
But isn't that, organization sounds like.
It's vague, but I don't think we can
have
see.
agency.
Yeah, I
We
think
are an agency.
We're agency in the legal
You're-
sense, I think.
Oh,
I can look
maybe
into
on
it.
legal sense, but no, we're not like a transit authority agency or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
No, we're like the human relations commission. There are lots of different kinds of agencies.
Well, I'll check into that, but
You
thank
check
you.
into it. too.
Okay. And then any other comments on slide one or slide two? Anybody? Okay, so then, having kind of laid out the introduction, we move into what our key accomplishments were over the last year.
Actually, may I ask you just quickly?
Uh-huh.
This is truly informational, which is that with the second one,
That's okay, just stay.
oh, you who have more experience, that is the primary responsibility of the HISRAP and CDBG? I'm just asking a question. It is?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need. Thanks.
Okay, so slide three are our key accomplishments, and we didn't take everything we've done. We tried to hit some of the highlights that I think will be meaningful for the city council. So some of them, as you can see, pertain to our primary responsibilities, which were outlined above, and has to do with HISRAP, the additional funding that we got, the streamlining of the application process, the proposals and funding allocations that we recommended, and so forth. So were there any comments or questions on this?
On the, for some additional funding, I would give numbers. It's always better to be specific. Going
Okay.
from
Was 50,
1.1 million
was
to.
55 and then was up to 100?
It was 55 in the first round from finance, and then it went up to over 100 when, at the end, when
Right.
Avenidas and PAC were included
Okay.
at the same percentage.
Okay.
But the Ebenezer bank money was at the behest of the
That was
council.
at the council level, that was
that
not
wasn't
at the
in
finance
response
committee
to-
level.
Yeah. Okay, so we might have to keep that vague, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so slides 4 and 5. Then we move into things that we've done outside of our primary sphere, which are HISRAP and CDBG. And these, this is wide-ranging. And again, there are some things that aren't on the list, mainly because we were more passive recipients in terms of hearing presentations and so forth. So I tried to pick things that I think were real highlights that showed what we accomplished. And so again, those include approving the new mediators for PAM, which is one of our ongoing responsibilities. The QPR training that we all attended over at Palo Alto Medical Foundation. The liaisons that we provided to the Project Safety Net and Citizens Advisory Group. The crisis intervention training that the PAPD brought to us and let us observe. The regional breakfast that we hosted for all HRCs in the county. The Made into America project that we're co-sponsoring. We heard about that tonight from Elliot Margulies. The resolution that we passed endorsing the constitutional amendment that corporations are not persons and money is not speech, although that did take forever to get done, but it was done. And the learning series that, again, we had our latest installment tonight from Bob Dulce. And we can add Bob here as one of the speakers that we've heard as well. So any comment on those or anything that you feel we've left out that we should be including, any issues or concerns?
My comment would be to reorganize the order in which it is listed.
Okay.
To put at the top maybe the more substantial achievements, and at the bottom the less substantial ones, like for instance the HRC breakfast, would be kind of at the bottom. At the top I would probably see liaison to Project Safety Net and the CAG. I think these were substantial time commitments and more impactful.
Okay.
So I would put this one at the top. The one also, the move to amend resolution, I think was voted by the city council, so it was impactful in some ways. I would put that at the top. When it says observe crisis intervention training, I'm not sure it's in I have a mixed feelings. Let's put it that way. Maybe it's the way we phrase it. same thing with a learning series. It's not, it's some form of achievement, but not quite, you know?
I agree that it's language, that it's some kind of language. I thought that that was important because it's an important part of what PAPD does, and that it is a terrific part of what is being done by, you know, public, departments of public safety all up and down through our county. So I'd like that worded a different way, besides observed. I agree with you. That's
It looks passive, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm not sure, is there a word that you want to use instead?
Learned about, participated in, observed,
Learn is already a bit more active than observe. Yeah, at least learn, maybe something better.
You know, in some versions participated, I mean, for all these things, including, you know, Commissioner Buchetti's a thesaurus.
And you might want to
Thesaurus?
put it as part of the learning series, you know, that's kind of,
Well, it's different from the affordable housing
yeah.
series.
Oh, yeah.
It was a whole
Yeah.
separate thing.
It's relevant because it's part of our relationship with the police department to be in touch with what it is they're doing.
Yeah,
And this was
okay.
something where they're taking the lead,
Yeah,
or at least they're one of the first ones to institute CIT.
Well, maybe, you know, should we say something like that, stay in touch with PD and learn about what we are doing.
Okay. All right, any other comments on the list of accomplishments? Okay, let's move on. So slide 7, now we get into sort of a transition. It's what we're looking to the future to do. So these are the priorities that we identified at our retreat a few
I'm
weeks
sorry,
ago.
I did put in the speaker's card as item number 4, and you're moving on to what, number 5?
No.
They're talking about different slide numbers.
I apologize, I thought we were moving past
We'll
number
get
4.
to you, we will. So slide 7, we're moving into our priorities and projects for the coming year. And again, this should be familiar because it's what we discussed at our retreat recently. So the first one would be HISRAP funding, and this includes some of the follow-on items from the human needs assessment that we did. So what I've done is listed out the priority, and then these are potential or proposed projects. I wanted to give a couple or 3 examples for everything so that the council would have a clearer idea of what these priorities would entail for us. So, so the first one would be to work with the nonprofit agencies, which are typically our HISRAP recipients, and city staff to make the case for increased sustainable funding for HISRAP. And that would involve first researching how other communities fund their human services, and then 2, following up in what Ray has termed as supplemental needs assessment to figure out what the unmet and emerging needs are in the community and what the case is for finding additional HISRAP funds. So any questions on that one?
Well, we're going to discuss the priorities next, so it's kind of
That was going to be my suggestion. Maybe when you discuss under the next agenda item the specific priorities, maybe then those could filter back to fill these slides.
Okay.
So then we could kind of segment the 2 discussions.
So do you want to switch to that?
I would just, you know, continue what was passed. That, and then whatever you decide in the next agenda item would filter back into these slides.
Okay.
I think that just seems a little, feels a little cleaner to me.
So I'm sorry, so are we just continuing with the slides, or?
You can continue with the slides past the priorities.
Okay, so
And then
skip
maybe
the
you-
priorities and then go back to them?
Right. So whatever you decide in your next discussion would just filter back into these slides for that presentation.
Okay.
Do you understand? Does that work for you?
Can I have a technical comment on the second bullet? I think we want to follow up not only with the HAZRAP agencies, because that's kind of a closed population, but I would like to see us follow the HAZRAP agencies and others with similar human services missions to assess unmet and emerging needs.
All right, so I'm going to fast forward through the rest of this then. And so once we get through our proposed projects and priorities, and we'll come back to it after we've had the chance to review the next agenda item, we want to segue into rethinking the HRC's role. Here we've gone back to the official language of the HRC, We have a request into the city attorney for some clarification on what our role can entail, so that we can go to the council and explain about the different initiatives and explorations that we would like to take. So this one is a little bit TBD because we have not yet heard back, but this is our interpretation of our charter because it's a very broad charter. And so we're kind of taking the bull by the horns and suggesting that this is the type of proactive role we can play. Then we would open it up to the council's discussion. So any thoughts or concerns on any of that?
We're not supposed to comment on other priorities.
I just think if we have that specifically during the priorities discussion, then whatever you decide to change there can filter back into the slides for this.
Okay. All right, so then I think if we don't have any questions or comments from the commissioners, I have a few speakers who want to speak to you.
I just want to add to slide 9, about the pen.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to add, I thought I had, but my name that that's number 4. Along with Commissioner Scott.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
And by the way, since we are here, I was also volunteer for Palo Alto Police Department.
Okay. Oh, good.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
I'm
didn't
already
hear you.
doing it, so it was.
Yeah, no, I remember that too, that you had that.
Okay. All right, great. All right, so if there are no other comments, I'm going to go ahead and go to our speaker cards. Okay, so our first speaker is Aaron James.
And am I addressing item 4 or 5?
You're addressing item 4.
Okay. I've been fortunate enough to attend a couple of the joint sessions, and I think that it would be really a valuable community exercise to speak at that session about the vehicle habitation ordinance and the fact that the Human Relations Commission was essentially out of the game. They weren't there to speak to it. And maybe that addresses what the chair was just talking about in terms of the expanded role. Maybe the city attorney's office can expand your ability to be active on that. But in any event, it's such a huge issue in the community right now that I think you would be missing an opportunity if at that joint session, you didn't talk about things like Bob's speech today, the gentleman from the county, who said specifically in response to my question that the vehicle habitation ordinance doesn't help the homeless issue. But one of the perceived things that I've seen over the years with these joint sessions is that oftentimes there's a deference from the Human Relations Commission to the members of the city council. And I think that's inappropriate. I think you have the right to be aggressive. You don't have to be impolite, but you shouldn't have to take a second seat to the city council, particularly in that joint session. And if you think the city council has acted inappropriately on a human rights issue consistent with your mission, then I don't think you need to bite your tongue on that. I think there's a perception in a certain part of this community that you all act in lockstep with the city council. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But I think that is a perception. And I'd like to think that the Human Relations Commission is a separate body from the city council, isn't simply a rubber stamp for the city council. And so I'd like that issue to be raised at the joint session. I think things like, crisis intervention team, a full explanation to the city council about the importance of having psychiatric intervention before we arrest people, and the importance of those sort of things are also high on the priority list. Also, I know that some of you have heard about the Santa Barbara program. This is an opportunity for you all, both in 4 and 5, to say, look, there's a lot of push in the community to bring the executive director down, Christine Schwartz, and Nancy Camp, who's on the ground at the 22 parking lots. Bringing those folks here and having the more open forums between the HRC, the city council, and the citizens. Let's have a wide open forum on these critical issues that are impacting so many people, because again, there seems to be a sense with a large percentage of the public that I talk to that the HRC is a closed conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so
I think there's one more card, there might be, yeah.
Sorry, Mila. Our next speaker is Mila Zalba.
Good evening.
Mila Zelka, Envision Shelter Network. I hadn't planned on speaking this evening, but I just saw here that on slide 7, one of the proposed projects is researching how other communities comparable to Palo Alto fund human services. And I just wanted to share what I shared with the council on August 13th, which is that I've assembled a team within Envision Shelter Network to do, for lack of a better word, an audit of available services, not only in our community and not only IVSN programs, but in neighboring communities. So we've been doing records requests and looking at, and meeting with other nonprofit colleagues to see what are all the services within, well, at least the homeless services field, Mountain View, Menlo Park. I'm curious if the County of San Mateo has similar approach to funding the same way Bob Dolce was here earlier this evening. So these are all things, as I'm new to this field and I'm sort of getting my bearings. And so if you guys are indeed going to be looking at some of that research, I'd be happy to contribute what I assemble. I have rough drafts right now, but I just wanted the commission to be aware that I am working on a version of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I knew that and I should have mentioned it, sorry.
No, that's okay.
We may be calling on you. All right, do we have any other cards on this item?
No.
Okay, this is for item number 5, though. So, this is 4. Okay, so we're done with that, we're done with 4.
Okay, I thought we were on, number, whatever.
This was number 4, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, the next one is number 5.
Okay.
Okay, so then moving on to number 5, and then.
Well, no, I meant to put 4 there.
Oh, you meant to put?
Yeah, I was hurrying at the last second there.
Okay.
My mistake.
Okay, so Mr. Crittenden, you want to speak on number 4?
Yeah, and again, I've been out of the loop for a while and I just jumped in at the last second, so maybe I hope I'm not off track or off point anyway. I was thinking a little bit about what Aaron was mentioning and want to reiterate that, yeah, I think it's very important that the HRC be very, very involved in these processes like the car camping ordinance, for example. And I don't know specifically the chain of policies that are followed for things like this to be passed. It was my understanding 10, 15 years ago that if something like for example, the sit-lie ordinance, I was actively involved in that, and the HRC was also. And I think that if the HRC wasn't involved, that would have stopped the whole process. And it's my understanding that, at least back then, from what I understand, that it was part of the official process for HRC to be involved before any final decision could be made. And if not, then it may be a procedural violation to where the final decision, the outcome may have been flawed because of HRC's involvement being omitted. I think it's following Ted versus United States case law. I'm not sure if I remember correctly that because you guys didn't play the role that you could have or should have, that perhaps the outcome could be challenged on that basis. Kind of like with the Brown Act, if a person's excluded from a meeting, no matter how irrelevant their role were to be, that meeting would have been deemed an illegal meeting. If the appropriate process wasn't followed all through the whole chain, then similarly, then the outcome, since HRC was omitted, then the outcome may have been flawed, and maybe that could be basis to challenge it. And again, I've been out of the loop. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, and for whatever it's worth, I hope it goes somewhere and does something positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Okay, so let's move on to item number 5, which is the draft of our proposed HRC priorities and projects. This is a more detailed version of the slides, and it's what we discussed at our retreat. Main changes, I think, from the retreat are that we combine the HISRAP funding with the human services needs assessments, since all of these things impact HISRAP. We've identified a number of projects underneath the priority of finding a sustainable funding stream for HISRAP recipients. So looking through this bullet list, are there questions or comments on these?
I'm not looking at the latest one.
The one that's the latest has my initials on the back. It was emailed to you yesterday, and there's extra copies there, which I'm happy to get for you.
I'm not sure I have the latest.
On this, so it has the,
This is from my
I can share it
packet.
with you.
This is anybody,
Yeah.
either one.
Okay, this is the latest one?
Yes, it has my initials on the back.
Okay.
Is that the document you had on the
Yes,
table?
ma'am.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mika, this is identical to the slides, so.
There was some, there's a couple things that changed. I think it's very minor, but I just wanted a clean copy.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I don't know what exactly the changes are, but let's go through and, so are there any comments on the HISRAP funding priority, which is our first one?
Well, I think there are less bullets than in the prior version, and there is one that has been left out that I think is still important, which is work with council members and CC staff to identify sustainable revenue opportunities. Because, we don't just want to hear about unmet needs, we know they are there. Now, we also need to know how much money could there be available if we had something that we could justify the use of for.
I think Commissioner Bicchetti had wanted to remove that item because it's really up to the city council to assign funding, and he's the one to overstep our role. So we're sort of making a case, and we have to do the research, and then at some point we have to hand the decision-making over to the council. So I think there was some issue there around our respective roles.
I understand, but my concern would be, that we do this a futile exercise if there is no money. We need to have at least some, before we get started to do this, have at least some assurance from the city council that there could be some money. Otherwise, what's the point of doing this?
Yeah.
City council won't do that until they see what all the priorities are that they have to deal with. That would be an abdication of their responsibility to give the HRC an allocation or the expectation of allocation before they saw everybody else's priorities. Every other department in the city and every other commission would say, whoa, what's going on here? So we have to make a case that's sufficiently good that when they look at all the priorities, they say this is an important one and it ought to be funded.
Okay, I see your point. I don't know, maybe it's something in between, because I still think, I understand that they won't commit to any money without a valid request, and we are competing against other resources. But in the past, the ISRAP funding was pretty much fixed, and it didn't move. And it's only lately, last year, we saw that there was a possibility to get maybe some of the Stanford interest money or things like that. So I would have liked to some assurance that there might be some additional money.
Yeah, actually, and I think that this might be.
Before we do all this work, because I would hate to do all this work and say, well, no, there is no money.
All right, so I just want to point out that we've decided to go back to the longer previous draft. Apparently, there might have been a mix-up with the email attachment.
I'm sorry.
So we're going back to this one that was in your packet.
Oh, okay.
So these longer bullets are on there. So I agree with Claude.
So my
So
point
your
is
point
moot
is, so
then.
your point is totally valid, but now moved, because I think we would keep that bullet. But I think we're not gonna put this such as, because I had previously listed some potential sources, and I think we didn't wanna get into that controversy until we had been able to research this a little bit more. So is everyone, are we all on the same page, and I mean that literally?
So the old version is a good one?
The old version that's in the packet.
Okay,
There's the more bullet points, that's the one we should be looking at.
okay.
Okay, so any questions or
Talking
comments
about
on
the
these?
second bullet under the first topic,
Yes,
work with council members and city staff to identify sustainable revenue opportunities.
yes. We could add if appropriate or something like that. Because it will depend on what we find in our supplemental needs assessment and what kind of needs we identify, and what kind of funding.
I just think it makes us look naive if we don't really know how the city does business. So I'll make a motion that we delete the second bullet under the first category. ask for one of a second, then you can leave it there.
I'll second the motion, Commissioner.
Angel second?
Yeah.
All right, so should, do we need to
Sorry,
speak to our motion?
Can you repeat the motion? I missed it.
I move that we remove the second bullet in the first category. Under projects, the second bullet under projects.
Do you want to speak to your motion?
I don't think any agency that is making an argument for budget allocation, whether it's a city department or a commission or whatever, has the authority, really, to identify how its requests ought to be paid for. That's primarily the job of the budget manager for the city and ultimately the council as to how it wants to allocate on a priority basis the totality of funds they have available to them. And most of those funds and most of the things that people want from the city are permanent in the base budget. Every once in a while there's an anomaly or a curiosity like the Stanford money where everybody wants a piece of that, and so there's a kind of a scramble to say, well, how about the Stanford money? But that's not the rule, that's the exception. The rule is that the city decides how it's going to fund those things that it wants to fund. And so we need to make it want to fund the things that we think it ought to fund.
Because I believe though, and stop me if I'm completely off base, that the concept though is to say that we're interested in looking for additional sources of income. I'm just trying to get a little bit more coverage.
Yeah, they were talking, I think Diane is correct, they were thinking about creative ways to find additional source of income, because we pretty much know that if they don't think in those terms, it's not too likely to happen. We're talking about maybe developer's tax or hotel tax or things of that nature. So it's why I wanted to start a dialogue along the possibility of doing something creative, because why do all this work if it's going to be business as usual and we know that it's unlikely we'll get much more money. So I wanted to, maybe it's a question of how it's phrased, and I'm willing to be flexible there, but I think you should say, in fact, identify potential revenue opportunities, potential additional revenue opportunities. So it's still
Well, you make me think, when I worked at Stanford and I was in charge of the budget, this would be like a dean coming to me and saying, well, here's what I want, and by the way, why don't you give me all the tuition of all the students who take courses in my school, and then I'll be in great shape. And then everybody else in the university says, whoa, wait a minute, we've got a lot of things to fund too, and we don't have access to tuition. But if, for example, the transient occupancy tax, that's a general purpose tax. That wouldn't be something that the city could in good conscience say, all right, that tax is going to go to this particular agency in perpetuity.
No, in fact, it would go probably in a general fund or something like that. But, the idea is to create some additional source of money, because otherwise it's not going to happen. I don't disagree with many of the things you say, right? It will certainly not go directly to HRC, that's for sure.
Well, you say it's not going to happen. I don't know whether it'll happen or not. I mean, it happened this year without anybody creating.
Because I've heard the city council members sometimes talk about creative ways to identify other pools of money. And I just want to send them a reminder.
Although remembering what Commissioner Buchetti said before, I mean, one of the dangers is to be duplicative. So I'm assuming that any agency that wants additional money would also try to be creative in the ways that you're talking about right now, unless there's a difference. So the point is not to be duplicative, maybe. I'm asking you.
Well, I'm just reflecting some of the things I heard council members saying.
Yeah.
They were trying to figure out how to fund us.
Think out of the box.
One more comment in support of my motion, and that is that, forget it, I lost my thought.
Okay, so
No, I've got my thought back.
Oh, okay.
Too late.
Since this is a priority, we want to make it a priority, how would we act on it?
By talking to the city council members
And the city
actively.
staff,
Asking, are you open to increasing the pool of money given to HRC for ISRAP, and how would you do that?
That doesn't seem like acting on a priority. It seems like asking them the same question anybody might ask them. We want some money, and how are you gonna get it for us?
I'm just reluctant to do a lot of work, because I think, it could be a significant amount of work, a bit like a study we did last year, and not knowing whether there is a likely positive outcome or not.
Having more money would be a good idea. I just don't think this is the place to make it a priority. Can the maker call a question?
Yeah, I don't have strong feelings on this thing anyway, so if you vote against me, I won't feel bad.
You might win, I don't know how to vote.
Okay, so did Commissioner Moore want to make a statement in support of your second?
That after further reflection, I am concerned about that being not a priority, that it would be duplicative of other efforts. So we could always keep our minds open to other sources, as the one that came up from Stanford, but it's probably not something that we want to focus on.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and call for a vote then. So who wants to strike this bullet and say aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's struck.
That's okay. It's no
Okay,
big
we
deal.
fought the good fight, that's all good.
We'll
Okay,
hold you
so-
to what you said, Commissioner Ezra.
Okay, so any other comments on the projects or the wording of the priority underneath HISRAP funding and human services needs assessment?
I just wondered, under projects, the fourth and sixth bullet seem to be about the same thing. Can they be combined?
Yeah, I noticed there was some redundancy there too. So yeah, I would definitely combine
That's
those.
just wordsmith.
Yeah, it might be helpful if we can get this maybe marked up in Word so that I can consolidate changes versus trying to do it in real time and so old school that. Okay, so otherwise are the three commissioners who are committed to this okay with what we've got here so far? This is ambitious, but, all right, then let's move on to the next one. This is HRC community profile, and the priority is to increase the visibility and community value of the HRC. So these are the possible projects listed, and are there questions or comments about these?
I think the first thing for HRC to increase its profile is to get a really clear-cut mission statement, what we can do, what we cannot do, before we, lay ourselves in front of other community, then tell them, collaborate with them. I think that's important, isn't it?
But I think we do have a clear mission statement, it's just that it's open to interpretation.
That's right. It's not the one that we have in corporation. In the company, this thing, we have to go, we have to be very clear what we're doing.
That's what we want to do in the study session.
I think before the study session, we still need to make sure that we have some specificity within these bullets. Because right now, just looking at it, it all looks too general, and I'm sure we can work on things in our next, this is a subcommittee meeting, but.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that we need some more specificity, because I don't want the council to say, what do you mean explore approaches? And we have to have something that we can respond with.
Right.
As an example or two of types of things we might do. So we need to, I don't know if we need to hash that out here, but we need to have that settled before we go before the council in October. So any other comments, questions, suggestions on that? All right, well, everybody ferment on that for a bit, and then we'll have to come back to it with the subcommittee. Moving on to affordable housing. As you know, we have the affordable housing learning series, so our priority would be to explore ways for us to advocate for additional affordable housing. And we have some projects here, including continuing our learning series. Any comments or questions here?
Well, reflecting back on Zelka's comment, the bullet about creating an affordable housing guide using information gathered from the learning series.
Mhm.
This is something that we ought to do in collaboration with the Envision Shelter Network. If you'd like to.
If appropriate, I can make a comment too. I just wanted to add, there is also an affordable housing piece that I'll be looking at to see if I can make that information digestible to the public.
Okay. So I think one thought here is to just capture the information that we've gathered in our own series, because we've had a number of speakers from all disparate agencies come, and then see how we can supplement existing sources with that. But I think we need to compile what we have and then see where we can.
Quite a bit of material.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. So, okay, so thank you so much for that, Mila. All right, any other comments or questions on this particular priority? And are the commissioners who signed up okay with what we've got? All right.
And we need to modify miscellaneous projects as well, right?
Yeah, now we're going into this one.
Oh.
So miscellaneous projects, so this is a little bit different. This isn't our priority per se, but one of our roles is to be liaisons with other community groups and agencies and to further assist the city. And we want to continue some of those strategic roles, and we also want to augment some of, and with new roles. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to have a liaison to Project Safety Net. We're going to try to institute a much closer role with the Santa Clara County HRC. Commissioner Moran has signed up to do that. We want to continue our role with the PAPD, and we want to start a new kind of research project in connecting recent immigrants with the community. And Commissioner Chen has agreed to just make some initial steps to see what that might involve, and then that might develop into a full-fledged role. And also, going along with that, to explore options for supporting diversity in our community.
I think this is very important to call out. The Asian community, the population went up from 10% 10 years ago to 27%.
Yes.
So there's a big increase, and then to maintain the diversity and let them to incorporate, break into American society, we need to work on it.
Yeah, definitely.
And as I mentioned earlier, my name needs to be added for PAPD.
Yeah, and I think Pam got left off here somehow.
It's number 1, 2, 3.
On this list.
Okay.
On this one.
And I know what happened between the two lists.
Oh, okay.
I can explain it to you.
Okay. And okay.
And could we add the Homeless Services Task Force?
Yes.
Yes. It's on the other one.
Okay, great. Okay, so any other comments, questions on the things that we've identified? Okay, if not, then should we take speakers and then go back to the slides, or go back to the slides and then take speakers?
I think we can just populate the slides from the discussion here once it's been cleaned up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, all right, so we'll do that. So we don't need to go back to the slides then?
We don't.
Okay, great. All right, then we can, are there any other comments or questions? If not, I'm gonna turn it over to the speakers, to our public speakers. Okay, so this is on item 5, HRC priorities, and the first speaker is Aaron James.
Yes, I've been fortunate enough to go to some of the Brown Act City Council retreats, but not HRC yet. And just for a point of information, where was this year's Brown Act retreat held?
It was at the Baylands.
Baylands, that's right. And I've been up at Foothills Park for City Council retreats. But I kind of want to remind us of what your current mission statement is. To address human relations issues, including the promotion of awareness, understanding, the resolution of actual or potential conflicts, discrimination, or injustice while encouraging community building and civic engagement. I know Commissioner Ray, I have a hard time pronouncing your last name, but civil engagement has been a big one of yours over the years as I reflect back. And one of the things is procedurally, these meetings are very difficult, at least for me, to follow sometimes because of the language. HISRAP, I kind of know what that is, but if you're not, you've got members of the community out here and you're not breaking down those acronyms, then we're not really participating in the meetings. We're just kind of listening. And you've got bullet point X, Y, and Z, but you're not orienting the community to what those are. So just think about how it is, and then when we have speakers, maybe having them so they're sitting in a position where the public can hear them and that you can as well. I know in the courtroom, that's really important, to be able to address the judge. So having the speaker with their back to the public and to you makes it look like it's a closed meeting. So I think part of the civil engagement would be just procedural things that you could do to improve that. Now also, the groups that you're gonna be meeting with, they all have the indicia of formal public agencies. That's all well and good. But I'd like to see you, for instance, reach out to a large coalition in the community that's gathered called Stop the Ban, now maybe more appropriately called Reverse the Ban. You've got Envision, but they're a formal service provider. I've met with Mila several times, extraordinary talent. But there's also talent in the unhoused community itself that's not being heard, okay? So you all need to not only outreach to the police, you need to do that, to the county agencies, but the actual grassroots community organizations in the community. Otherwise, you've missed a huge part of your mission statement. That's really important to me. So again, in terms of priority, when I've gone to the retreats, they list up so the public can see and participate. Number one, this year we're going to be dealing with the consequences of the vehicle habitation ordinance, the passage of that, and it's, the other ordinance that was passed, a week later, restricting people from being on public facilities from 10:30 to sunrise. So you want to put those up there. You want your priorities to be very visible. Normally the city council at their retreat takes 4 or 5 very identifiable ones. So it helps you all know what you're working with for the year, but also civically engages us, the community. So it doesn't feel like you guys are having a private meeting there. We're just kind of watching like from TV land or something. So I just invite you to consider transparency, your own mission statement, open it up. This door was closed during a part of the meeting. That's a violation of the Brown Act. You gotta keep the door open, okay? Just, a little teeny procedural thing, but important so that you have the indicia of openness, transparency, and of course, the mission statement of human relations. I would like you to, again, as one of your big priorities.
Yes, sorry, Mr. James. Our next speaker is Chuck Jagoda.
Hi. Thank you all for all the work you do and for giving us a forum to tell you some things that we are burning to tell you. Toilets in the park, there's a big tendency not to have toilets in the parks in Palo Alto. I understand, it's part of harshness to the homeless, but it's beggaring the citizens who need those bathrooms also. If you are a parent or grandparent and took your kids to the park and one kid has to go home and pee and then the other kid, you can't spend the afternoon in the park. You spend your afternoon going back and forth to the house because there are no bathrooms available in parks. And at Coverly, one of the big reasons why there's this big issue about Coverly is concern of citizens over cleanliness. But those citizens insist on closing the bathrooms and the showers. If you're concerned about cleanliness and sanitation, don't close facilities that help improve those things. And also, about this whole homeless issue, I've gone to city council meetings and policy and services committee meetings and heard it at least 3 times. A council member will turn to the rest of the staff and the rest of the council and say, why isn't human resources involved in this? And they make a note, get human resources, yes, we'll check. I don't, maybe I misunderstand, but why are you guys not involved up to your necks in human relations between rich and poor, between haves and have-nots, between housed and unhoused? If that's not human relations, instruct me. Why have you taken no positions, made no statements about this ban on living in vehicles? You don't have opinions? Your neighbors don't discuss this? You don't think it's human relations? Instruct me. How a city treats its least fortunate, if that's not human relations, please tell me what is. And along the lines of my colleague here, Aaron James, the idea of you're gonna fix homelessness, I know how the Indians felt, you know? Indians were very, very competent people. They ran this whole country quite well before white folks came along. Nothing against white people, but they screw up a little bit. Iran, Vietnam, few things. Anyway, as I said to the city council, to go to the doctor and get a diagnosis where you, the patient, don't get to speak is not really good doctor care. Homeless people have ideas. We should be at least consulted. We're not idiots. Thank you.
And Ms. Munoz,
Yeah. Thank you for having a meeting. Thank you for inviting us. I was particularly interested in this section about priorities. You know, Mr. Islam, we do not have your concept of intéressant, that it's only really interesting if it has something to do with money. And in this case, it's particularly inappropriate because the monomania of previous councils of Palo Alto, with gaining greater assessed values and greater property values, has been the root cause of this homelessness. But for the Human Relations Commission, I think it would be very well served to read some of the things that people have written about these issues. You would be scandalized by the venom, the vitriol, the hatred that our fellow citizens express for these unhoused, unfortunate people. As if there was a letter, you know, we are supposed to allow these people to sleep in the allow them? Who are we? The other day, at one of the councilors, a woman named Dolores Cordell, who was a very prominent member of this community, very well respected and dignified. She was a judge and stood up to speak to this issue. And I expected her to say what the law was, the Mr. A versus Mr. B and the whole country. And she said nothing of the kind. What she said was, you're taking these people, you'll arrest them, their car will be impounded, it will cost them $1,000, which they do not have. You're taking away everything they have. And I was very moved, because this is a very private person, a very reserved person, that she should reveal to the whole community a tender, a very human love for these other people astonished me. And I found it very, very moving. And what I can say to you is, you need to know what's happening with your mind. But it's not your mind that's going to operate with the City Council of Palo Alto or any other city council. Speak from your heart.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. All right, so we've concluded our agenda item number 5, and we're going to move on now to an update on the homeless task force, sorry, losing the power of speech. And Commissioner McKetty, who is our current liaison to that task force, is going to give the update. Thank you.
This is a report one step removed from the last meeting, which I could not attend. I have the notes from that meeting, and Mila Zelka was there.
And Minka was there as well.
And Minka was there. What I can tell you was that there was a report from Jessica Loving, who is the executive director of Destination Home, and she reported on efforts to provide supportive housing for homelessness in Santa Clara County. And then the group discussed ways to use the $250,000 that the city of Palo Alto has put on the table, at least tentatively, for homeless services. And it was agreed that the county and the city staff would work together to prepare a proposal. that would leverage the county funding that we heard about earlier today, and qualify Palo Alto for participation in existing county-wide programs. The Palo Alto staff also asked the task force to help educate the city council on the larger long-range needs and costs for homeless services. And some letters are being drafted to the council and other approaches to help raise the level of understanding about what the broad topic of homelessness really entails. Representatives of the task force will be meeting with the city manager on September 26th to go over some of this, and I can tell you that there's a roster attached. It's quite a number of people who are part of this task force, from the city of Palo Alto, from the community working group, from the county of Santa Clara, from the Downtown Streets team, from Envision Shelter Network, Momentum for Mental Health, Palo Alto Housing Corporation, Human Relations Commission, Peninsula Healthcare Connection, and Project We Hope. So all of those groups and individuals, one or more individuals from each of them, make up the Homelessness Services Task Force. So that is a work in process. And if there are questions, Mika can probably answer them better than I, since she was there.
How many people, if I can ask, are on the task force? I mean, how many in typical?
About 15?
50?
Much more than that in this list.
Well, 15, 20, I didn't add up all the names.
We average about 10 people at the meeting. Yeah, 10 to 15. Not everybody comes.
When are the meetings held, Ray?
30 on this list.
When are the meetings held?
Whenever they're scheduled.
Okay, there's no.
Steady meeting time.
I think the next one's at 2 in the afternoon next week.
No, that's a meeting between the community working group and the city manager.
Okay.
Right, that they convene to have a meeting with the city manager.
Okay.
So,
The
Ray
next
could
meeting
probably
is-
speak more to that, because that was something they scheduled.
Yeah, we have if I may speak, there's a delegation of just a few, one person per organization going to meet with the city manager.
Okay.
And I believe our next full task force meeting is the 7th of October?
Sounds familiar.
Something like that.
Okay.
So, one suggestion, I think we never made it official, but Ray would be our liaison to this task force. Maybe we could take this opportunity just to do it, so he could properly represent the HRC. Not that he was not doing it before, but.
Okay, we could, we might want to name another member too. I was wondering whether our newest member in his spare time.
Yeah, no, that sounded great. I was talking with Joe about that yesterday, and I do want to talk to you more about it, but it does sound very interesting, something I'd like to get involved with.
Okay.
So maybe I'll make a motion to nominate Ray and Greer to be our liaisons to the homeless task force. Is there a second?
I'll second. Do we want to speak to our motions?
No, I already have.
Yeah, I'll just say I think you both be great. I hope you both have time to do this.
Sure.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on that? All in favor of assigning Commissioners Brichetti and Stone to the homeless task force, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? All right, then we unanimously agree on that. And thank you so much to both of you. I know it's another time commitment. There's never enough time. Okay, any other questions or comments for Commissioner Brichetti, or any other questions on the homeless task force? If not, we're going to go ahead and move to our speaker cards. See, make sure the ones that came in first. So I think our first speaker is Chuck Jagoda.
Hi again. I'd like to ask you guys that just volunteered to go and be on the community working group task force, please suggest to them, as I just did to you, that you can do this job a lot quicker and a lot more efficiency with input from the patient than You know, like veterinarians have to work on patients that they can't communicate with, and they do a pretty good job. But it's easier if you can talk to the patient, that's all. Please see if you can plant that idea in their heads. You know, I can't imagine anybody hasn't heard, we're in the middle of the greatest transfer of wealth in recorded history from poor people to rich people, and it just was another report of the same thing again the other day. It's an avalanche. Talk about global warming. You cannot slow this down. The people in Palo Alto have profited greatly from this. Not that the people in Palo Alto went and tried to get all the money from the poor people, but that's kind of what happened. The stock market is back to where it was when Lehman Brothers went under, but people whose jobs were lost will never get them back. Again, it's not that Palo Alto went out and plotted, but what has happened, the market forces that some people made better decisions about, some of us made lousier decisions about, has worked to the benefit of homeowners in Palo Alto, not to the benefit of some of us who worked in Silicon Valley firms, helped make that wealth, and are now, like me, out of work. I'm not one of those people, but there are people like that I know. There are children of people in Palo Alto, parents of people in Palo Alto who are homeless. I think that, again, all the brain power, all the will, the entrepreneurial courage that exists here could be put to work on this problem. It's not just that it's a problem, for us, it's a problem for you all. Diversity is an important value in human species and in business and in where you live. I mean, you know this. What Palo Alto is doing, intentionally or unintentionally, is squeezing out the middle class, the working class, the trailer park, the one trailer park in Palo Alto. Mountain View has dozens of them. Palo Alto has one, and it's being squeezed out. And to go back to some earlier discussion, you know, we're not really asking for help. I never asked anybody to give me a house or get me a place. I'm signed up on lists, I hope to. I joined the streets team, I hope to. But you know, all I'm asking is get your foot off our necks. Stop taking away people's vehicles. Palo Alto, if anybody had brains, would buy vehicles to give to homeless people.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chicago.
Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Lynn Fundiscoper.
Yes, I'd like to reiterate that the biggest stakeholder in all of this are the homeless, and why they are not either on the task force or, and I went to the city community working group website, and was Larry Duncan was listed. However, I found out that some information on that website is out of date, so I don't know if he's still there representing poor people, but
He is.
it's pretty sad that the people that you are affecting by all of this aren't represented. Also, Pat Burt talked with us, and he was very angry that the HRC was prevented from addressing this issue for 2 years. He mentioned in one of the city council meetings. And I heard from one of your members that when they brought the subject up, someone told them, the city's handling it, you don't have to, which is pretty bad. Now, I just sent out an international resolution to everybody, the city council and you, that was adopted a couple of weeks ago in Denver, I believe. And it's basically saying that communities that are kicking out the homeless and really marginalizing them are pretty bad, and that there are states that actually do care about the homeless and are actively building shelters and such. So when I went to the website to see the community working group's members, I was disappointed to see that Mr. Bacchetti has been in that group for several years and is a member of the HRC. So my question is, why didn't you know that this is a big topic and bring it and have your fellow commissioners hold hearings. I think that was disappointing to see that you were on the group that was addressing this.
Do you want to respond to that? All right, thank you very much then. All right, our next speaker is Aaron James.
So maybe we could better call the task force the No Homeless Services Task Force. And again, I'll check with the city attorney, but it seems to me that these meetings should in fact be under the penumbra of the Brown Act and open to the community. It really is outrageous to have like Envision and Downtown Streets Team and all these folks who are employed to assist the homeless, apparently taking the arrogant position that they know better than the homeless themselves. I'm really an arrogant stance. And I would think, unless people are afraid for their jobs as service providers, that they would have the courage to speak up and say, this makes no sense. We're highly paid in most cases, paid to provide services for the homeless, but we don't want to have them on the task force. In fact, in my estimation, it should at least be a preponderance of the 15 members should be individuals that are absolutely unhoused at this time. I know as a public defender, they used to try to teach me, well, you've got to have client control. I said, client control, what are you talking about? It's their case. I'm not into client control. I want the client to be empowered to assist, to make decisions about the case that they're facing, their liberty. And it's analogous here. It's just outrageous to think that these folks would be so arrogant as to think that because they're paid and because they may have more diplomas or less diplomas, I mean, I misspoke there. Most of the unhoused folks that I know in the city of Palo Alto have more diplomas, more degrees than I do as a member of the state bar. So that's common sense reason why you'd want them on there. They've got all the practical experience of being homeless, and they're highly educated. If you all would tolerate them being shut out on the task force, let's go back to what your mission statement is. Our mission to address human relation issues, including the promotion of awareness. Oh my goodness, how do you promote awareness among the folks that you're trying to serve when they're not there making decisions hand in hand with you? Understanding and resolution of actual or potential conflicts, discrimination or injustice while encouraging community building and civic engagement. And you wonder why members of the unhoused community suspect that service providers are more interested in their own self-interest than the interest of the people that they're supposed to serve. Again, I say it's absolutely outrageous, but you all, as representatives of the Human Relations Commission, can speak out. And you can make a difference. And Ray, I encourage you to make certain that half of those members are from the homeless population. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. Our next speaker is Stephanie Munoz.
Yes, well, I'm ill-suited to speak about the class struggle. After all these years of saying, but this is America. This is not a class society. This is a democracy. I have had to admit that we have a society in which working class people are not fully respected. There's no denying it. And I don't know. I know that one of my friends, David Warner, has an organization for handicapped people, and their slogan is, like Aaron's remark, nothing about us without us. And he, from his lifetime of working with people who are handicapped, claims that they do have a lot of things to say in their own defense. The reason that we have this problem at the moment is a large increase in the number of homeless people that has come about because of the unemployment, chômage. We have to understand that it's not, I think it's endemic. I think that it all began when Palo Alto and Stanford together decided that they could get away with having the money from the industry, and somebody else out there could provide the worker housing. But reasoning with people isn't, I hope that you'll be up to the task, because I have not been able to. What you have to do is, you have to acknowledge what is happening. You have to understand that the council is really doing a bad thing, but you can't be disrespectful about it. You can't clap when somebody says, shame, don't you? You have a tough row to hoe. Here's Mr. Bacchetti. Right as we speak, we're continuing with the same poor policy. Stanford has given Palo Alto bushels of money, but no housing for the hospital workers. I'm a little hospital rat from way back, and I can tell you there is nobody worse paid than hospital employees of the hewers of wood and drawers of water class. There's no place for them to live in the entire county. Well, maybe down in Gilroy or Coyote, except that the train only runs in the daytime, and these hospital workers get off work at midnight. There isn't any worse.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Yep, okay.
All right, Mr. Crittenden, our next speaker.
Yeah, I can't, well, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to say, but Aaron pretty much said a lot better than I could. I'd like to maybe echo and reiterate what a lot of other people have mentioned, and maybe throw a few different aspects on that. We've all heard the old familiar saying, it's hard to get money without money. Similarly, it's hard to get somewhere when you're coming from nowhere. And I'm thinking about the 14th Amendment, which, you know, the Constitution. You guys heard of the Constitution, right? Okay, well, anyways, it's a document in National Archives somewhere, anyway. The 14th Amendment guarantees us equal access to the law, the courts, and government in general, equal access and equal protection. And for the members of the homeless community, or anyone, whether it's anyone, a conservative, whoever, to be denied that equal access is a total, complete violation and deprivation of our human rights, of our civil rights, of our liberty, and I mean, shit, equal access to showers. I mean, what's with the dignity of keeping clean, equal access to law enforcement. The police respond somewhere, they're generally gonna take the person with the money. I mean, that's the person who's right, and the homeless person has gotta be judged as the one who's in the wrong, almost all the time. And what Chuck said is great. I mean, why the hell is there no homeless person on the task force? Why isn't that obvious? Why doesn't I mean, that should be the most obvious thing in the world. It should have been the first priority on the list. If someone from Envision was excluded, people would be screaming about that left and right. And they'd be on the list just like that. Why do we even need to discuss this issue about why there's no homeless people on the task force? I think maybe you can see where I'm coming from. If not, then Aaron can go on for 10 minutes and try to help me.
He had his 3 already, I'm sorry.
I know. I just,
Thank you, Mr. Crittenden.
no problem.
And our final speaker is Mila Zelka.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that point. I wanted to just give a little bit of history of why the task force even came together over the summer. I had submitted an unsolicited proposal on behalf of Envision Shelter Network to the city with the hopes of just starting a conversation. And what came out of that conversation was the need for what a few of my colleagues, service providers, felt was a collaborative solution. And so what we did was myself and Community Working Group met, some of the board members of Community Working Group met, and I said, you know, me coming up with a proposal and going to each service provider separately and asking them to do an MOU with me is really unrealistic and time-consuming and difficult. Let's have a group of colleagues get together and talk about it. We did invite the county to come and present. We invited the city to come and present. So this is a task force that's convened by Community Working Group. It is not a task force that belongs to the city. So I just want to clarify that. I don't know if you, Minka, would add that, but I think that I want to emphasize that on the board of Envision Shelter Network, there are 2 formerly unhoused people. I convene roundtables with the unhoused with a voice. I have made suggestions to the task force to include such esteemed friends as Chuck and other members of the faith community. However, among us service providers, there is a need for us to have a space to talk about how to work together. That's what we'd really like to do, and I think if the city would like to have a task force that is inclusive and open to the public, we would love to participate in that. So I think of it, I mean, I don't think trade association is like the appropriate term, but coming from the construction industry, that's sort of where I go, you know. I think it's nice to have a group of colleagues that can talk about what each one of our best practices are, and as you know, I've been bringing my ideas to you guys, and anyway, I encourage the city to do whatever they need to do.
Thank you. All right, so we are concluding item number 6. Moving on now to item number 7, which is our update on his site visits. Included in the packet is a spreadsheet. I don't know if I can find mine. And this is an item that we had, thank you, that we brought up now a couple of times, once at our last regular meeting and once at the retreat. So because we always, if I could ask the audience to please keep it down. So as you know, we have a number of agencies we work with in HISRAP, and we normally don't visit them during funding cycle years, but this year is an off year, and we like to check in occasionally without being too disruptive. So I wanted to propose that each commissioner over the next few months visit at least a couple of the agencies, and if a group of us want to go together so that we don't have 2 or 3 people dropping in randomly, I think that would be very respectful of their time as well. In the past, I visited the Mayhew Clinic, which was wonderful. It was great to see up close what they do and talk to the CEO there, who really gave us a lot more detail. It makes you really understand the work of the agency a lot better. And I know that some of the other commissioners are intimately familiar with at least some of our HISRAP agencies. So this is our list. So I'm hoping that each one of you will commit to at least a couple or 3 of these agencies.
Could I interrupt you just for a moment?
Uh-huh.
I need, here we go, found it.
Okay.
Do we all have?
Yes, we all have that.
Good.
And then if you could, I don't know, Mika, if you want to do it in pen and paper, just have people write their name and submit it back?
We've tried both. I've sent it out via email and we've done it pen and paper, so whatever people want to do. And you want to do a master, Commissioner Chen, and then, or just people put their own on here, and then I will compile it all together.
Put your name, and then staff can help us with compiling, and then it'll be on us to reach out to the agency and set up a visitation day.
Yeah, whoever the lead commissioner is, that's kind of the person who has decided to take on the responsibility of contacting the agency. So it's not like 3 people are contacting.
So can I suggest that each one of us be at least one lead and
like
one
additional
name, so that we have some balance?
Yeah, so if we could, either prior to adjourning or very shortly afterward, please get these into Minka, and then we'll follow up on that in future meetings, and hopefully get reports from some of you on what who you visited, what you observed.
Why don't you just want it?
Are we picking now, or are we gonna wait?
Well, let's pick now if you have,
Okay.
if you have time. And if not, if you need a little time, then you can get back to Minka, but these things tend to fall through the cracks if we don't deal with it.
Commissioner Chen has started hers, if you want to just.
Yeah, because we don't want to duplicate the same,
Okay.
different ends.
Okay. I'll do Mr. Reviews. And I promised Philip Daw so many times that I would go to Envision, so I need to do that. visited Stepping Stones, and that's a wonderful program. By the way, that's one of our new programs, so if any of you have not had a chance, I think you'll check out some of the new ones that we're doing.
Nice to see you.
Just a question, Vista Center, are we funding them? Is
Yeah.
that CDBG or?
No, that's his right.
Israel, okay. I
That
forgot.
was the second time we got more money. That got
Oh,
added,
okay,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna be offered to be the lead on Envision, and I'm also going with Teresa to Vista, and I would like to be one of the commissioners going to Memento Mental Health. So if anyone else is interested in either, any of those agencies, you can sign up on mine, or.
I'll sign up on yours, okay. This one is full of notes.
Yeah, there's 3 of us on here too, if anyone wants to leverage any of these.
Okay, I'll take that one.
And in case we don't remember what we signed up, would you send us the completed list?
Yes,
I will do my
our
best.
wonderful Minka will help us hopefully sort all that out.
All right,
Yes.
let's, here, how do I,
Okay, so let's just take a couple of minutes and get these forms in, so we can compile them.
Anybody wants to?
Is that the master list?
That's got like 3 people on it, so if you want to,
Okay.
if you want to.
Yeah, that's one to add.
All right, so should we
we're
maybe go on in the
moving one
meantime?
around, is that a good idea?
Do we have any reports from officials? I don't really know exactly what those are. Do we have any, are they official reports or?
I think it's the category.
Okay.
It's the category of the ones
Okay.
that come underneath.
Okay, so do we have any commissioner reports?
Yeah, yesterday I gave a speech
Yes,
at
bravo.
a peace, multi-faith peace picnic, and I saw some of you, but ask Amy to send a copy of my speech because we already asked for it, so you'll be able to see it. In a nutshell, I talk about 3 themes to encourage peace, which are education, women's rights, and healthcare.
And I thought Claude did a great job.
Yeah.
Very
Actually,
good.
I did a talk about July 3rd for Independence Day, talk about American independence history in Chinese and in English and Buddhist.
Senior French Day.
Yeah, that's right. I can't try my best.
So are there any other commissioner reports? Anything you've been up to that you want to? Where do you want to just tell us all the things that you've been signed up for now? You remembered all the.
I need to come up with my own master list to
Okay.
keep track of it all.
Well, I'll just say, this is for his first regular HRC meeting. His first meeting was at our retreat. This is the first regularly scheduled monthly one, and he's hanging in there with us and taking quite a bit onto his shoulders, so thank you for that.
No problem.
And
Happy
if
to be
you reach
here.
out if you have questions, concerns, comments, we're all here to help you get on board.
Thank you.
All right, what about council buddy reports? Ray and I are meeting with our council buddies next week, so we'll probably have a report at some time. I hope it's a good one. Anybody else had any luck reaching out to their council buddy yet?
I still have to try to get in contact with Gail.
Okay, well, keep trying. The best thing to do is to join the Y, because that's where she hangs out.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, now council liaison is not here. So is there a staff liaison report?
I do have a staff liaison report. The first thing is the Brown Act class. You asked me to look into a Brown Act class, which I followed up with. One is coming soon, but they don't have a date, so that's the response, but I will let you know as soon as that happens. As you know, there's a HR Commission recognition event, November 7th at Lucy Stern. You will continue, I believe you've already been invited by the clerk's office, but I'm sure you will get reminders along the way from the clerk's office and or Amy or myself. The Kim Klein event, that is the How to Write a Fundraising Plan that's been offered to our boards and commissions and nonprofit partners. That is October 2nd. I saw many of your names on it, but in case you had any questions, feel free to see me about that.
And I want to make sure, was Greer on that list, because he might have been.
I believe you were.
Did you get that e-bite for the fundraising training?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I will double check. I thought I saw it, but I will,
When is this, on October 2nd?
It is at 7 p.m. in the evening. Let me just get my
It's interesting because we do work with a lot of nonprofits who struggle with
low
fundraising,
tech
So it kind of gives us
calendar.
ideas on possibly how to collaborate.
Okay.
Help
It's
us
a
more
Tuesday
fun-
night.
better fundraising.
Can't
Really
find.
really awesome speakers.
I'm sorry, it is
It's the first.
the first.
To be like your mentor for.
October
So
1st,
if you have
colleagues.
time to-
October 1st?
October 1st.
What day is that?
It is a Tuesday evening, 7 p.m., Lucy Stern. Okay, I will make sure that, I thought I saw your name, because I thought I cross-pollinated, but a colleague sent it out. And then the last thing is a reminder of the October 7th, thank you, study session with council. So as that gets closer, those are usually at 6 p.m., and they're usually right here. But as we get closer to that, I will continue to let you know. And that concludes my report.
It was a wonderful report, Mary.
Thank you.
All right, so our next item is, do we have any tentative agenda items for our next meeting on October 10th? We should probably plan to review the study session we had with council, because that will have been a few days earlier. And do we want to continue our affordable housing series?
Yeah, and I've been giving that some thought, but I thought it would be interesting to see if there's any local experts on ELI, or extremely low-income housing. So I've been doing a lot of research. I'm not sure if some of our partners in the community have someone that might come and speak to us. I just Googled to see if there's a Stanford professor that had done any research, or the Social Innovation Center at Stanford. I'm trying to get the name right. So I'm looking into that, but I'm open to other ideas as well. And I also had another agenda item.
Okay.
So we were requested by the city council to look into, there was a request by city council to consider taking Avenidas and Palo Alto community childcare out of the HISRAP system and giving them direct service contracts with the city. So because those grants are reviewed by the Human Relations Commission before they go to the Finance Committee, then the council, I believe it falls within our purview to review that concept and give any feedback that you'd like to the council on this. I have a deadline of getting back to the council, or probably Finance or Policy and Services. I need to look specifically what the HRC thinks about that, and that January. I tried to push it off as long as possible, but our next meeting is October, so we should start talking about it. So I'm not sure how we're exactly going to go about that, but I think I will do some work to frame that conversation, to have it at our next meeting.
Okay, yeah, I know that that's come up before the HRC in the past, before my time.
It did come up.
And I'm just wondering if staff could put together a timeline of when this was raised and why.
Yes.
I think Ray might.
I believe we have that in the full HISRAP history that was in the needs assessment, but I will see what kind of history.
There's a page each for childcare.
Right, and they each wrote their own
Yeah.
histories as well. So history as far as HISRAP and their own history pages. So those are the two items that I had.
And what the consequences would be? Just
Well, we'd have to discuss that
Okay.
further at the next meeting when it's agendized.
All right, do we want to follow up on the Made into America project and see who actually went to the website and told their story? Put a little pressure on all of us to make sure we do that?
Can't pressure on me, I already did it.
Oh, he's always ahead. Well, let's put it down provisionally and then see if we have
Okay.
time to do that. All right, any other potential agenda items for next month?
I'm fascinated by what he's doing right now. If I can comment, I went 3 years ago, I went to a class at my daughter's university, which was, I thought, on memoir writing, why not in your old age? And it turned out to be gerontology, and it turned out to be a whole project that this professor, now it's all over the nation, is doing to try to get elderly people together because they're reticent in groups, because it's good for their mental health, it's good for their community building. So I was wondering if he knew about it.
I'm not sure. If you want to follow up directly with him on that, that'd be fine.
All right, so any other agenda items? All right, if not, we are adjourned.